Here is how to make advanced animation in After Effects as a beginner to tell stunning stories, wow your audience, and even land your first paying client. Pay attention because this course was almost deleted. In my more than 6 years of experience and working with clients like this, I have seen beginners get lost doom scrolling through tutorials hoping to improve, only to give up or be average. That's why I tried to build the course I wish I had. A simple step-by-step path to professional results. I spent more than 3 months recording and editing it. But my recording software somehow glitched and 15 minutes of content just vanished. I nearly deleted the whole thing, but I found a fix without re-recording it. So this isn't just any other tutorial. It's a full course that teaches you not only how to animate, but why we do what we do. You will skip the frustration, avoid common beginner mistakes, and gain the confidence to animate anything, starting from logos, icons, or even illustrations with motion that feels smooth, authentic, dynamic, and truly professional. You will also learn the principles of transitions and storytelling with this comprehensive course. Even if this is your very first time opening After Effects, don't worry, I will guide you step by step. By the end, you will have a strong foundation in motion design and After Effects and the confidence to create client-ready animations. I recently saw a video where a couple adopted a cat. Before the adoption, this cat had been brutally abused and carried a lot of trauma. When she arrived at her new, safe home, she wouldn't leave the bathroom sink for some reason. That's where she felt mostly protected. Her new family didn't force her out, they simply let her be. She stayed in that sink for days. Slowly, she began accepting gentle pets. Over time, she left the sink and started exploring the house. And today, she is deeply loved and thriving. We all live in our own versions of that sink. Often, it's not a physical place but a mental. Some people call it comfort zone. I've been there too, and I'm guessing in some ways you are too. This course is designed to help you leave the sink, not by force but by encouragement. Because it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail, we all do. But I also want you to adopt some of the mindset, the philosophy of advanced animator. So, advanced animators focus on solutions, not problems. Instead of saying, why is this so hard or I don't know what to do, ask yourself, what can I try right now that moves me forward? Even advanced animators get stuck, but they don't stay stuck. That's the whole point. They let go of the outcome and trust the process. This is the most important one, which is of course easier said than done, but they're so in love with animation that they don't have time to worry about whether it will get likes, views, or even approval. They just show up and animate. Finally, advanced animators are advanced because they practice fundamentals more than regular people. They enjoy the stuff that doesn't give instant gratification because animation is a time consuming art. And remember, a cat must leave the sink herself. People can help and support, but it is the cat who has to make the decision. Okay, so now we are in Illustrator and I have this file that I downloaded from the freepik.com. And if you're someone who like me who doesn't know how to create or how to draw things, I'm going to help you, don't worry. So I'm in this cool website called Freepik. I'm sure you are aware of it, and Freepik has some amazing assets. But the thing that you need to have in mind is what you want. And so I'm going to search for oil rig because that is what I want. So once you have found the oil rig that you want, what you want to do is I'm just showing you example. I'm not going to use this. Okay, so I'm going to just hit download. Let me get rid of this and free, and the file has been downloaded. And then right click on it, show more options, or just extract to oil, the name of the folder. Okay, and once you click on that, the folder will be created and you will be able to open it. Okay, and now I'm going to open the file. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to separate layers for the Illustrator files. Okay. And I want it to be simple. For the animation, what you have to do is every layer should be on its own so that you can animate it. Okay. And so I'm going to start making changes to it. So first of all, I'm going to just select this. Okay. And then I'm going to get rid of that. So I just clicked on delete. Okay, so I'm going to just remove this part and we already have what we want. Okay, now this was downloaded with freepik. This was downloaded from a freepik.com, like I said already. Now I'm going to get rid of this parts. Okay, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. I'm going to deselect this part and then I'm going to hit delete. Now, of course, I don't want this circle to be hollow. Okay, what I want is I want only this portion. Okay, and I'm going to just delete these points. Now I'm going to drag this like this. I'm going to drag this like this. Now, of course, we are using some cheap tricks here, and that's completely fine, although it could cause some issues here and there, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use even more cheap tricks because I don't think this is as important. So I'm going to just place this like this, and then I'm going to just, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just group them, okay, by pressing Control G, or you could just select both of them and right click and then group, okay. See, group, okay. So we have this portion here. Now I'm going to change this its color to this part, okay. Now I'm going to get rid of this parts as well. But what we can always do is we can always work in After Effects. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the remaining parts as well. As you can see, there are remaining parts here. So I'm going to just select them and then delete them. Okay, now I'm going to start by ungrouping them first of all, so that we can have more control over the layers when we start working in After Effects. Okay, so I'm going to ungroup and every layer is on its own. Okay, see, these layers are are on its own. So I'm going to just select this group. Okay, so I'm going to select this group, then I'm going to press Ctrl G. Okay, so we have one group with that. Then I'm going to select this and this. So I'm going to basically select this part, then I'm going to press Ctrl G, and so it's going to create a group of its own. And then I'm going to select this and then I'm going to create a group on its own. Now we have this remaining part, which is this tiny portion, okay, which I think is irrelevant, but if I get rid of that, it won't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag that into that group, okay, and then we have this part, okay, which is in this part. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select this, then I'm going to drag this and drop it like that. Okay, and then I'm going to select this and then I'm going to go to release layers sequence. Okay, not this option, and so they are on its own. Now I'm going to just drag them out, then I'm going to get rid of this empty layer. You can also do that in After Effects, by the way. Okay, you don't have to do everything in Illustrator. And okay, so we have, so I'm going to just rename this. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to call this top, I'm going to call this mid, and I'm going to call this bottom. Okay, so we have this UFO. Now I'm going to press Control S. Now I see a problem here. So this is a CMYK. It shouldn't be CMYK. It should be RGB. Okay, so I'm going to save this and then I'm going to call this UFO and then hit OK. Right? So our UFO has been separated. Our layers are now on its own. It's really simple. All you have to do is ungroup it, then group it, and then just select the layer, right click, then release to sequence, and they will be on its own. And make sure that you rename them. We are going to rename it even better in After Effects. Okay, so hi. So welcome to this chapter. This chapter is going to be basically basics for complete beginners. So the reason why I'm making a specific chapter on this is because I want to ensure that even complete beginners feel confident and they don't get overwhelmed in the later chapters. Also, if you are not a beginner, you can skip this chapter completely. So these are all the parts that we will be covering. Of course, we will focus on the essential tools. For now, I'm going to explain and not the entire software. Okay. This is basically a toolbar. And the most important part here is this, which is selection tool. So selection tool is your primary tool for selecting, moving and resizing. Okay. All the layers that you want. So that's the selection tool. It's the most important part and you will be using it more than anything else. Then we have hand tool. So this one is hand tool. Now you don't have to specifically so go here and select this. Okay. So by the way, shortcut for the selection tool is V. The shortcut for hand tool is H. Okay. So hand tool is used for basically panning and navigating around your composition. Okay. So for example, if you have zoomed in and if you want to navigate, okay, right. And so that's how you do it. But you don't have to press even H. Okay. So the shortcut for that is basically spacebar. So when you hold spacebar, the hand tool will be activated on its own, and when you let go of the spacebar, it will deactivate. Then we have zoom tool. So it's basic. Zoom tool helps you to zoom in and zoom out of the composition. These are all the 3D tools. You don't have to worry about them right now, but they are basically related to the 3D camera. Okay. Then this is a rotation tool. It basically helps us to rotate, okay, like this. Then the shortcut for that is W. But this is the tool that I rarely use. Okay, I don't think I have ever used that. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why. Then this one is the most important tool, which is pen behind anchor point, pen behind or anchor point tool. The shortcut for that is Y. This tool is really crucial for adjusting a layer's anchor point. Okay, so this is an anchor point and we will go that into deep, I'm going to explain that later. Okay, so don't worry about that. So this is an anchor point, and this tool basically helps us to arrange that anchor point to wherever we want. Okay. Then we have this, which is called rectangle tool here. Okay. It allows us to create multiple shapes that we want. The shortcut for that is Q. So, okay, pay attention here. Okay. So when I'm pressing Q, okay, I'm basically switching. See? Now we have ellipse tool. Now we have polygon tool. So when you press Q, it basically switches and then you can select that and then you can draw whatever it is that you want. Okay. It's that simple. Now we have pen tool. Okay, so the pen tool is also equally important. Okay, of course, every tool is equally important here, but pen tool, like within shape, draws the custom shapes. Okay, it draws custom shapes. For example, let me change to white or something of this. Okay, so it basically draws this custom shapes that you want. Okay, it can draw like stroke, it can do so many things, right? And that is pen tool. It can also draw motion paths and masks. Okay, it basically creates masks when you have already selected a layer. For example, if I select this, okay, this tool basically creates a mask. So I'm going to just here, now we have a mask. See? Okay, so that's the use of pen tool. Pen tool is going to be important in this course as well. Then we have text tool. So its basic text tool allows us to create and edit text. By the way, the shortcut for the pen tool is G, okay? And the shortcut for the text tool or type tool is Control D. Then we have brush tool. All this 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this all these 4 tools are used for advanced editing. Brush tool can be used for animation. So brush tool is basically you paint. It is used to paint on layers. Clone stamp tool is basically clone the pixels. Okay, then eraser tool is, you understand, you get the point, right? And the roto brush tool. So roto brush tool is used to there is a person talking in front of the camera and you want to like remove the background, then this tool is for you. But we are not going to use this tools like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're not going to use this, but I just wanted to give you the basic idea. Then we have puppet pin tool. So the puppet pin tool lets you add points. Okay, so let me show you really quickly. So I'm going to just draw a rectangle here, and don't worry about anything for now. I'm just demonstrating. Okay, and the things that you see here are called pins. Okay, we are going to go into much detail into this, but don't worry. I just wanted to demonstrate how powerful it is. See. Okay, it's really powerful and you can do some wonders with this. So puppet pin tool lets you add points or pins. So this yellow thingies that you see are called pins, and you can add it to any image, any shape layer, and move those points to create smooth, organic and stretchy motion. These are all the basic tools. Let's understand the basic transform property. So I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, and so these are all the basic transform properties. Okay. So the first one is the anchor point. Now, like I said, anchor point is the most important tool. Okay. So like the reason why the cursor is still at the puppet pin is because I haven't pressed V. So I'm going to press V. And when we do that, we basically switch to the selection tool. Okay. And so we are back to the selection tool. Like you should be in habit of pressing V every now and then. First of all, let's understand the anchor point. The shortcut for the anchor point is A. Okay, so when I press A, I will be able to see only anchor point. Okay, so the anchor point is the point around which all the transformations happen. Okay, it's basically the layer's pivot or center. Okay, so why it's crucial? So the position of the anchor point dramatically affects how animation looks. Okay, for example, think of it like a hinge of the door. Okay, so I'm going to just place it here. Don't worry about anything. Like I said, I'm going to just press R and then I'm going to just show you. Okay, so see, it basically changes from this point, right? So you get the point, right? So anchor point is basically the center of the layer, but you get to choose the center of the layer. Okay. So like I said, think of it like a hinge of the door. If the hinge is on the side, the door swings open differently than if the hinge was at the center. It's that simple. Okay. The shortcut for that anchor point is A. Then we have position, which is P. So so position basically controls the layer's location. So we have this is X coordinates, this is Y coordinates, and when you turn this into 3D, we get Z coordinates. Okay, see. So this all this three, this is Y. Okay, X. Don't get confused about this. For now, we are going to walk in 2D. We are not going to use this at all. But if you wanted to know, these are all the different coordinates. Okay, the shortcut for the position is P, and then we have scale. The shortcut for the scale is S. Okay, scale basically controls the layer size. Okay, but there is something that I wanted to tell you. So we get something like this constrained portions. Okay, so it basically what it means is that if I change this will change it in the same proportion. For example, let's change this to 100 and this to 100 as well. Okay, so I'm going to just get rid of that, and I think I'm going to keep both of them at 400. Okay, and the reason why it wasn't constrained and they both weren't in proportion is because I did something back, and that's why. Okay, and so if I change it, okay, they both changed in a linear way, and look why like it's changing from the anchor point, right? And so you get the point of the anchor point and the scale property as well. Okay, the last property is opacity. So the shortcut for the opacity is not O but T. Okay, it basically controls the layer's transparency, right? So 0% is invisible, 100% is fully visible. So these are all the transform properties. Now, if you have updated to like the latest version, okay, you are going to have all the layer transform properties here. And once you understand the basic properties, let's understand the keyframes. Okay, so what is a keyframe? So a keyframe is a marker in time that defines a specific value for a layer property. For example, I'm going to just press S to bring up the scale. I'm going to like this stopwatch is basically what allows us to drop a keyframe. So this is called time varies stopwatch. So I'm going to just drop a keyframe, and this is called keyframe. Then I'm going to go at 10 frames. So this is basically a time indicator, okay, and this is called a timeline, by the way. And then I'm going to go at 10 frames. These are all the frames, by the way, and then keep this at, like, I'm going to drop another keyframe. And if you want to drop another keyframe, just click here. Okay, so it basically adds or removes the keyframe at the current time. Then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to just change this to 0. Okay, and then I'm going to just play by pressing spacebar. Okay, and this is a basic animation, and these are all the keyframes. So keyframes are really fundamental in After Effects. Okay, so animation in After Effects is created by setting at least 2 keyframes with different values for a property over time. Okay, After Effects, then what it does is that it basically calculates the frames between and it animates. Okay, and in the olden age, what they did is, what they had to do is basically they had to draw everything in between, right? Now we don't have to do that. We just have to assign the starting animation and the ending animation, and in between is taken care by the software. Okay, let's move on to the last part, which is layer, comps, and pre-comps. So what is a layer? So this is basically a layer, right? So a layer is a fundamental unit of composition representing an individual elements like videos, images, text, or effects that contributes to overall design. For example, let's say if I let me import a random image. Okay, I'm going to import something like this astronaut. Okay, so let's bring that astronaut. So we now have astronaut.png. So if I just if I place it here, okay, so it is now basically a layer. Okay, so a layer is basically a fundamental unit of composition, and everything that you import in After Effects and then you import into this timeline will be turned and will be called layer. Okay, composition. So composition is a container. So this is basically a composition, and the here is how you create a composition. Okay, so you just click here and you will have a composition. Okay, we will go through this in the next lecture when we will start animating. Okay, so don't worry about that for now. Okay, so composition is basically a container or a canvas where you organize and arrange layers to create final video or final animation. Okay, so it's basically a canvas for animation, right? Then we have something called pre-comps. Okay, so what is pre-comps? So pre-comps is a feature in After Effects that allows us to like group multiple layers into new and independent composition within your main project. For example, let's say I want to animate both of them, right? For example, I want to animate both of them at the same time, but there is already this animation. So After Effects allows us to pre-compose. So I'm going to just pre-compose and then, okay. So now look at them. Everything is like both of them are, and if I change this, okay, I can, like, you get the point, right? And so it basically becomes an individual layer, right? And that is what we call pre-comp. So this new composition or pre-comp can then be treated like a single layer, like I said, and it makes like things really easy to manage complex animation and effects. Okay, so why we use pre-comps? So pre-comps, like I already show you, it helps us organize complex projects. For example, if you want to, like, let's say you want to export both of them for a different project, you can just pre-comp them and then you can just save them as a completely different file, and then you don't have to like redo this into a into a different project. Like, you can just import this. So basically you can create templates for yourself with pre-comps. Okay, then you can also reuse animation, and then you can apply multiple effects. Of course you can apply multiple effects on a multi layer, but you can, like, some effects has its limits. Okay, and this allows us to like apply multiple things. Okay, this is effects and presets. Okay, so effects and presets, like, I'm not going to go much deeper into this because it's like really huge and you don't have to understand all of them. I don't even know all of them. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that for now, but this is effects and presets, and if you want to like apply anything, all you have to do is just go here and then you can search it, and then you can apply the layer, apply the effect. Okay, so if you want to apply the effect, all you have to do is just search your effect. For example, let's apply the fill. So I'm going to just apply, or let's apply something that makes things a lot cooler. So I'm going to search for drop shadow, and then I'm going to just apply here. Okay, then I'm going to just, so whenever an effect is applied, this panel be will have the effects control. So these are all the properties, these are all the parameters that you can control. Okay, for example, we have opacity, then we have direction, then we have distance, then we have softness of the shadow. Okay, so I'm going to just see, it's really simple, right? And so this is the basic of After Effects, and it's really simple, and just stick with me. Okay, as you can see, we are in After Effects, and I have already created these folders. I'm going to walk you through them, but before that, I'm going to set up the workspace. Okay, so the workspace is going to be the default one. I'm not going to make any changes to it. I'm just going to get rid of this panel, which is properties. Then I'm going to get rid of this panel, which is aligned. Which is okay, which was preview, I guess. Okay, now I want the composition to have more space. Oh, sorry, I want the layers. So this is basically a layers panel, and I don't want to lose out this much space. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the align panel, and then I'm going to drop. So look at the blue part. So whenever it's blue, it's going to embed into that space. Okay, so if it's green like this, if you can see here, the green part suggests that it's going to create its own space. Okay, but I don't want that. So I'm going to drag it and drop it here. Okay, now I'm going to drag this. So I don't want audio as well, so I'm going to get rid of that. Then I'm going to drag effects and presets here. Okay, and so now I have more space for the layer so that you can see properly. Okay, now I want more windows. So the first window that I'm going to bring in is character, and so I'm going to drop that here. Okay, then what I need is I would also need paragraph for the text. Okay, so I'm going to look for paragraph, and here it is, and so I'm going to drag that here. Okay, so this is our workspace. Now if you want, you can save this. So I'm going to save as new workspace. I'm going to call this IG box, because we are going to work on a rectangle or square post. Okay, and so I'm going to call this IG box, and then hit OK. In this lecture, I'm going to first of all walk you through this folder. So these are all the folders that I create in After Effects whenever I'm working on any project. Okay, so 00 PC is where we store the pre-comps, 01 AI is where we store Illustrator files, 02 footage is where we store footages, that is video footages. 03 images is where we store the images if we have any. 04 audio is where we store the audio recordings or sometimes sound effects as well. And 05 randoms is where we store all the random stuff that After Effects will create. Okay, so After Effects has tendencies to create solids. If you create a solid in a composition, it's going to have a separate folders on its own, which would be called solids. Now it could be tough to navigate when you are working on a bigger project. So what I like to do is I always keep those folders in randoms. Okay, I would also do is if I'm using templates, so I'm going to also drop them in the randoms folder. Okay, so I don't have to look forward and I don't have to get lost in this process, because to be honest, this could be little tiring at first, but it is going to save you so much time that you won't even notice it. Okay, and so anyways, that was about the workspace and setting up the folders. The next step is to import the Illustrator file. Okay, so how do you import? So you can import by double clicking here. Okay, or you could press Ctrl I, or you could just go to edit, or you could just go to file, not edit, go to import and then import file. Okay, so I'm going to press Ctrl I. So I'm going to open up this, and then I'm going to just select this. Okay, so this is the file that we have prepared in the previous lecture. Okay, so I'm going to just click on this and make sure that When you import it, you follow these steps. Okay, so this is UFO.ai. This is the dialog box that is really important. So make sure that you don't mess this up. Okay, so import kind should always be at composition whenever you are importing an Illustrator file. Then footed dimension should be at document size. Then I'm going to hit OK. Okay, it's really simple. Now, whenever you import an Illustrator file in After Effects, it creates two things. The first one is that it creates layers and then it creates a composition. Basically, this composition that you see is created through this AI files. Now, if I get rid of this, it won't work. See? So this is the base and this is the composition that is made from this base. Okay, so make sure that you don't delete this folder. It is really important, especially after you have animated stuff. It could be really tough to get things back. Now I'm going to drag this UFO layers to AI. Okay, I'm already in the UFO composition. Okay, but if you want to create a new composition, you go to here and then create a new composition. Okay, but for now, I'm going to show you the composition settings. Okay, so this is basically a composition or canvas where we animate. So I'm going to open up the composition settings so that I can explain. Let's say I want to upload this to Instagram. Okay, now this size is too much. Okay, so this size was preset in Illustrator. And so I don't know why it was this way, but I may have not changed it then. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I don't want this size. So what you can do is you could either go here and find something that you like. For example, social media square. Okay. And then you click on it and then you have width and height, which is 1080 by 1080. The duration is going to be 10 seconds. The resolution is full. The frame rate is going to be 30 seconds and keep everything as it is. I haven't changed anything here. Okay. And then I'm going to call this to UFO underscore main because this is going to be our main folder. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I can see them properly, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select them. Okay. And then I'm going to parent it to top. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to explain what is parenting. Okay, so this is parent and link panel. If you don't see it, just click on this button, or you could just go to here, columns, and then click on parent and link. And if you, let's say, you have matched to my workspace, and if you don't see any of this, just right click and then columns, and then you will be able to see them. And if you don't want anything, you can get rid of them as well. And don't worry, you can always bring them back. Okay. And so parenting is basically how parenting works in real life. Okay, so top is basically bottom and mids parent. Okay, so wherever top goes, these two layers will follow. Okay, they are basically parented to this. Okay, so these two are basically their child. And what does a child do? A child follows their parents. Okay, and same goes with After Effects. So when I chose this and when I pick whipped this. Okay, so basically I'm going to just drag this and then I'm going to drop this like this and then it will have this. So this shows the layer that is parented. Okay, you can do that from here as well. Okay, so I parented it because I don't want to scale them one by one. Okay. The next thing that we are going to do is I'm going to get rid of the parenting. I don't need it anymore. Now, of course, these are all in Illustrator shapes, but I don't want that. Okay, I want it to be a native shape layer. So After Effects allows us to create any Illustrator file and turn it into an After Effects files. Okay, so I'm going to just select all of them, then right click, then go to create and create shapes from vector layer. And so I'm going to click on create shapes from vector layers. Okay. And just like that, we have native shape layers in After Effects. Okay. So now, of course, you can get rid of that because I'm going to just select the Illustrator files and then I'm going to delete them. And so we have our shapes, and then we can change anything that we want here. Okay, and that's the power of After Effects. It's really powerful. So now we are going to start by making changes to them. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to make change to the bottom part. Now I'm going to introduce you to After Effects basic properties. Okay, so this point. Okay, let me open up the anchor point too. Okay, so this point is an anchor point. Okay, so the anchor point is center of gravity. Okay, of course, in 2D worlds and gravity doesn't exist. Of course, when I'm talking about computer software, but this anchor point allows us, okay, to at least mimic the center of gravity. Okay, so wherever this point is located, okay, the layer will change from its perspective or from its reference. So if the layer is here, the layer will change from this point. That's why it's called anchor point. Okay, it's the main point from which everything changes. So if I place it here, and then I'm going to just rotate it. It's going to rotate, okay, from this point. So this is basically a reference point for any layer. It's really important, and make sure that you change it before you start animation process. Okay, it's really, really crucial. So make sure that you don't make this mistake. Okay? So I'm going to just bring it in the center. But as you can see, I have used some cheap tricks, so the After Effects won't allow me. And so what you can do is you could just press the shortcut, which is Control Alt Home, and it will be aligned to the center. Okay. So this is basically a properties panel. I'm going to just bring it here or here. Okay. Now, of course, we don't need this, but this is a new update in After Effects. So if you are not using a new update, don't worry. But these are basically all the properties that are visible here. So they have given a new window for that. Okay. And so you can work from here. Anyway, so you can press this shortcut to set this to fit, right? Okay. Now, the next thing that I want is I want to change the colors first of all, because I don't think I like these colors. So I'm going to go to project, and then I'm going to import the color that I want. Okay. So I have already created a color palette. So I'm going to just select this. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm noticing is that I don't like the size of this. It's humongous. I don't like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it down like this. Okay. So it looks nice. Okay. The next thing is I'm going to change its color. As you can see, the fill. So these are all the fill and stroke. Okay. Let's see what's happening here. Now I'm going to go into contents. Then we have group 1, group 2, and group 3. Okay. So this may sound confusing, but it's because I used cheap tricks. So you don't have to worry about that. What you have to do is you just have to select this and then go to fill and then choose white color. Okay. And so we have the bottom. Now I'm going to rename this, and to rename in After Effects, double click won't work. Okay. So make sure that you don't use that, because in most softwares we double click and then something happens, but here it doesn't work. Here you have to press enter. And so I'm going to call this exhaust. Okay. Now I'm going to change the colors in this portion as well. So I'm going to go into contents. And so we have this portion that we changed color at last. And then we have this portion. Now, of course, I don't want this to be white because I want it to be black. I want this feeling of it being transparent somewhat. Okay. Then we have this part. Apart from this black color, I want everything to be blue. I'm going to select them. Then I'm going to go to fill. And then I'm going to select this and then hit OK. And so we have the mid part ready. Okay, I'm going to call this UFO underscore body. Now I'm going to change this as well. I'm going to change this to black because I want to give this the same feeling. Okay. And so I'm going to go inside. Then I'm going to start by seeing the objects. Okay. So I want this to be black. Apart from that, I want everything to be white. Okay. So I'm going to just remember that it's group 4. Then I'm going to select everything else except group 4. And then I'm going to change the color to white. Okay. So we have something like this. Now, of course, you have to go into the habit of saving files. So I'm going to go to file and then save. Okay. And then I'm going to go here and then I'm going to call this UFO underscore main 3 because this is third time I'm creating this. Okay. Now I have already imported the image. Okay. And so I'm going to drop it into the images. And then the main folder, the main composition should always stay out. And so make sure that you remember that. Okay. So now we are going to start the animation. Okay. But before that, I forgot to rename the last portion, this part, which is window. Now I haven't changed the anchor points much. I haven't changed them because it's not going to move. Okay. So I'm not going to animate them. The only thing that we are going to animate is the exhaust here. Okay, so this is pen behind tool, which is anchor point tool, as you can read. Okay, so this tool basically allows us to change the anchor point. Okay, see, but I want it to be at the center. You click Y for that, and this is a selection tool, which is basically a selection tool. It allows us to select objects. Okay, now we are going to use something called null. Okay, null, Null, null. I'm going to right click new null object. Okay, so that's how you create a null, or you could press Control Alt Shift Y, which is a huge shortcut in my opinion, and it creates this null. So this null basically don't get rendered, but it plays a huge role when it comes to animation. So you can make any change to this, right? You can change this, you can change anything, you can change rotation, you can change anything that you want. Okay. But it won't be rendered out. Okay. So you might be thinking, what's the use of that then? So let's say every layer is animated on its own. Okay. For example, every layer has a keyframe on the position. But now I want to add an additional animation. What I can do, or I want to move them, but if I move them, the position animation will be affected. So what can I do? In that way, what comes to help is null are really important, but null are like god. Okay, it doesn't exist for some it exists and it plays a huge role. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to just place it in the center, and this is a approximate. And if you want to, this is called snapping, by the way. And what you do is you just hold control and it snaps. Okay, so let me show that to you again. So I'm going to just press Control Alt Home to recenter the anchor point, and make sure that you do that, because normally what happens is the anchor point is at this point, but I want it to be center. Then I'm going to hold control and then I'm going to just snap it to the center. Okay, now I'm going to rename this. Okay, so I'm going to call this UFO underscore control. Okay, so this is basically our control for the UFO. I'm not going to animate anything. I'm not going to touch anything except the exhaust, but it's going to be at the later stages. Okay, so now I'm going to choose them and then I'm going to parent them to UFO control. Now see the magic of null. Now I can move them. I can do whatever I want with this, and it won't be rendered out. Then it basically looks like this. Okay, see, let me show you. So if I just preview this, it disappears. So UFO won't be rendered out, but it plays a huge role. Okay, so I'm going to just resize the UFO. Okay, but before that, let me walk you through this layer transform properties. Okay, so we have anchor point. Shortcut for anchor point is A. Then we have position. The shortcut for position is P. Then we have scale. The shortcut for scale is S. Then we have rotation. The shortcut for rotation is R. Then we have opacity. The shortcut for the opacity is not O, which I think you think, but it's T, okay, for transparency. So these are the shortcuts, but if you are using this, you don't have to remember the shortcuts. But I think shortcuts are really important. Okay, so we have the basic setup for the animation ready. In the next lecture, we are going to start animating the UFO. Now we are going to start the animation process. Okay, and for that, we are going to use this null. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to just resize it because this size is too much. And I'm going to rescale the exhaust because exhaust is too much. And I didn't delete the position keyframes that I showed you for an example in the previous lecture. So I'm going to get rid of them. Now I'm going to just scale up the exhaust because I think it's too small. So I'm going to press S and then I'm going to just increase the scale. Okay. And so this one looks much better. Now I'm going to set up the keyframes on the position. But before that, I'm going to just make sure that the UFO is spaced or placed clearly and it looks nice. See, this is a visual communication medium. And so you have to make sure that everything looks nice. Now, of course, if you don't like this, for example, if you don't like this workspace, you can also bring that here so that you can see more properly. Okay, and so that's completely normal. It's not set in stones. Okay, so before we animate this, we need something that comes from here. Okay, so we need a shape layer for that. And I'm going to create a shape layer using pen tool. The shortcut for the pen tool is G. Then I'm going to click here. Don't make the mistake that I made. Okay, so if you have selected any layers and you create a shape, it's going to create a mask. Okay, see, a mask. And I don't want a mask. I want a native shape layer like this. So I'm going to deselect everything. Then I'm going to select the pen tool and then I'm going to just create a shape, random shape like this. But as you can see, I want a stroke, but this has already fill in it. Okay, but I don't want fill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the fill and then it opens up this fill option and then I'm going to select none and then hit OK. Okay, and now I'm going to go to stroke and then I'm going to just pick this color, which is blue. And then I'm going to just adjust this handles like this. Okay. And so we have a shape layer like this. Now I'm going to just increase the scale of it just to randomly match it with the size, visually matching it with the size of the UFO. Okay. Don't worry, I'm going to explain how everything is working. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to rename. So I'm going to call this UFO underscore in. So this is basically what brings UFO in. And then we are going to create the same thing that takes the UFO out. Okay. And so I'm going to go into contents and then I'm going to go to shape one. Then I'm going to go into stroke and then I'm going to change the line cap from bud cap to round cap. So let me show you what is a butt cap and what is. So these are basically the types of strokes. Okay, so this is butt cap, this is round cap, and this is projecting cap. Okay, but I want it to be round cap. Okay, once that is done, I'm going to just open up the stroke one again, and then what we are going to do is we are going to use the taper. Okay, so the taper helps us create this droplet like effect. As you can see, it's already looks really nice. Okay, so I'm going to make changes to the start length, and if you want, you can make changes to the end length, but you don't have to do that. Of course, you can work on the different properties, you can change many things here. Okay, but I don't think that's really helpful. The only thing that you need to remember is start length and end length, depending on your taste and depending on your preference. Okay, so we have the basic uh, shape ready. Now, what is this switch? Why? Where is everything? You might be thinking if you are new to After Effects. Okay, so this is solo, which hides all non-solo video, which is basically if I click on this button, okay, it's going to be the only visible layer. If I want to see this, it's going to be visible. Okay, I don't have to go here and hide everything. Okay, so this is basically a solo. It helps us to focus on one thing at a time. Really cool and handy tool. So the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to animate this. Okay. And how do we do that? To do that, what we do is we go to contents and then we choose add and add in trim paths. So this is a trim path. It has three properties, start and offset, and then we have trim multiple shapes simultaneously or individually. Okay. Start is basically the starting point and is the end point of the layer. Okay. On offset allows us to offset the points of start and end. It does it randomly. I don't know how that works. Okay. So I'm going to turn everything to 0. Trim path basically trims the path as the name suggests. And then I'm going to drop the keyframe, which is called time vary stopwatch. Okay. It basically toggles the ability of a property to change over time. Okay. So I'm going to click on this, and this is basically a keyframe. Okay. Now I'm going to press U. So U is a shortcut in which every keyframe will be visible. Okay. And then I'm going to press Shift Page Down. So Shift Page Down allows us to bring this current time indicator to 10 frames ahead. For example, I want to go to 10 frames, 10 going to 10 frames could be really tough, right? So I'm going to just press Shift Page Down, and then I'm going to go page down, page down, page down, page down, page down 5 times. Okay. And so we have 15 frames. So Shift Page Down for 10 frames, page down for 1 frame. And then I dropped keyframes at the end. Okay. Then I'm going to change this to 100. And then I'm going to change this to 100 as well. Okay. So we have 0, 100. Now I'm going to select the start keyframe and then I'm going to just offset them. Okay. So we have an animation like this. Okay. So you might be wondering what is happening here. I don't know. Okay. So let me bring them back. So both the properties, for example, the property of start and the value of the property at the start and at the end is 0, and at the end is both of them are at 100. Okay. So basically the path is not getting trimmed. Okay. When I offset the keyframe, we have this gap, which basically allows this animation to take place. Okay. And so that is why trim path and this offsetting is really important. And so I think I'm going to hide this for now so that you can see properly. Okay, so let's see. So this is the animation. These keyframes are linear keyframes. So when I select them and then I'm going to go into the graph editor, this is a graph editor And if you want to be a motion designer, and if you are someone who is watching a course on After Effects, you should be familiar with Graph Editor. Graph Editor is the most important tool for motion designers. If you don't know this, no amount of training, no amount of tools, no amount of plugin will ever give you the results that you want. And if you know this tool, no plugin, no tutorial, you won't need anything else. If you know this, it's really handy. It's not that difficult as the internet makes it. It's really easy. Okay, I don't know why everyone is so afraid of graph. So these are all the keyframes, by the way. Okay, see, this is the keyframe. This is start, this is end. So these are all the keyframes. Now, as the name of the keyframe suggests, that this is a linear keyframe. Okay, nothing in real world moves in a linear way. Everything moves in waves, in arcs. Okay, and so I don't want that. I don't want it to be boring. See, it's boring. This animation is boring. Although it's linear, it's boring. We want it to be in arcs, in waves. Okay, we want it to have easing in and easing out, and that is what After Effects allows us. Okay, so I'm going to select them. Going to right click. I'm going to go to keyframe assistant, and then I'm going to hit easy ease. And now look at the graph. So this is basically what an easy eased keyframe looks like. Okay, so I'm going to go into the graph editor. Now, if you want to know the shortcut is Shift F3. I don't know why that didn't appear here. And so see the difference between them, and now look at the difference between the animation. Okay, see, now let me duplicate it so that you can see. So I'm going to duplicate this, and to duplicate in After Effects, press Ctrl D. Okay, and then I'm going to press U to bring up the keyframes. Then I'm going to get rid of the easing. So how do we do that? We select the keyframes, then press Ctrl and then click. It's that simple. Okay, now let's see the difference. Okay, now let me change the color of this so that you can see it more properly. Okay, so there is a huge difference, as you can see. Let me solo both of them, and let me offset this so that you can see it even more clearly. Okay, see, you can see the difference, right? Although it's really subtle, and it's the same thing in life as well. It's really subtle, but it works well. It works really well. And as we go further and we start easing even further, you will be shocked by how powerful Graph Editor is. And if anyone tells you that Graph Editor is useless, you shouldn't learn Graph Editor, well, they are lying. Graph Editor is the most important part. Okay, so that was on the Graph Editor. That was a huge lecture on Graph Editor. Sometimes what happens is you don't see the name. Okay, it's null one, but it's not null one. It's a source name. Okay, and so I'm going to just click here, and it changes to layer name. Okay, now we are going to animate the UFO here. Okay, and so I'm going to press S. Now, as you can see, I cannot see the value here. That's confusing, right? So I'm going to click here, and then it basically expand or collapses the layer switches. Okay, so I'm going to scale this down, not too much. Okay, but something like this. It doesn't have to be too big. Okay, and so I'm going to press U to bring up the keyframes on the UFO in ray. Okay, I'm going to match UFO to the UFO in ray. Okay, so I'm going to select this, and this is going to be the final place. So what you always do is you always start with the end. So if you want to, if this is the final animation position, okay, you should start by keyframing that. Okay, so I'm going to press P and bring up the position property. Then I'm going to drop the keyframe here. Okay, now we start the animation process. Okay, so if you don't do that, what might happen is you might lose the initial value or initial value of the property or the position. Okay, and it might be tough to do that. Okay, so what you do is you always begin everything with the end when it comes to animation. Okay, and make sure that you remember that, and you do this with everything. Okay, you do this with everything. Now I'm going to show a trick to you, and if you want to reverse that as well. Okay, but whenever you do, whatever you do, always begin with the end. Okay, so this is the basically the end point of the first animation. I want the UFO to be here when it arrives. Okay, and so I'm going to go here. I'm going to bring this keyframe out, and I want it to be. I'm going to go to this frame. I chose it randomly, by the way. And not everything has to be accurate, not everything has to be scientific. Okay. I'm also going to drop the keyframe on rotation by pressing R. I'm going to drop a keyframe on pressing on scale by pressing S. Then I'm going to press U. Now I'm going to go back to somewhere here. Okay. And we are going to match the scale, the position, the rotation to this. Okay. So here I'm going to just go wild with this curve. I'm just going to make sure that it looks something like this. And then I'm going to just get rid of the constraint properties. Okay. So I'm going to just click here and so that I can scale without constraints. Okay. And so I'm just going to manually place it here like this. Then I'm going to rotate it like this. Now I'm going to scale it like this. I'm going to rotate it. Then I'm going to scale it or place it like this. Okay. And now I'm just going to adjust the timing of the keyframe. So I'm going to go at the first keyframes. Then I'm going to press Shift page down, which will take me 10 frames ahead. And then I'm going to go 2 frames ahead. So I'm going to press page down, page down. And so we are 12 frames, and then I'm going to just bring these keyframes at here. Okay. So let's see the animation. Okay. So it's something like this. It's really bad. It looks bad. And we know why it looks bad. So now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to ease this. Now, and after that, we are going to cut. Okay. Or I should say trim. But before that, I'm going to adjust this path. Okay. So I'm going to click on the UFO and then I'm going to just make a bit change to this. Also, you have to remember that this process is not set in stones. It's a really flexible process. It's, as you can tell, it's a fun project. Okay. And so it's not set in stone. So don't worry if you make a mistake. It's really easy project. And if you don't know how to trim, all you have to do is just drag this like this and it will be trimmed. Okay, so when you are at the end, your cursor will change to something like this, and then you just press shift and it will align to the time indicator. Okay, which is this blue part, and the shortcut for that is this. Okay, now I'm going to trim this layer like this or like this. Okay, and so let's see now the what do you think is the biggest issue? Now try to figure that out. Okay, and so if you haven't figured it out, the biggest issue here is the first one is the easing. The easing is not working, and animation is not working because the easing is not working. See, now the droplet is ending here. I don't know why I keep calling it droplet, but the beam of the UFO is ending here. Okay. And so it's not only easing, but it's with timing as well. Okay. So if we start here, so if I offset this keyframe by this, and so we have something like this. Okay. So what can we do to solve this issue? So to solve this issue, there are two things that needs to be done. The first one is that we have to get the timing right. And the second one is that we have to get the easing right. So timing and easing are the most important aspect of animation. You learn it with trial and error. Okay. It's not something that I learned intuitively. Okay. I learned it with time and practice, and you will learn that through time and practice as well. But this course will minimize that. Okay. So how do we solve that problem? So first we start by easing the beam, then we start by easing this. Okay. So when we ease this, we will have a reference point so that we can ease this one. Okay. So let's see. So I'm going to press Shift F3, or you could just click here, and then we have the graph editor. Of course, this looks confusing. So I'm going to just ease one property at a time. Now, when you click on this, it says fit all graphs to view. Okay. And so I can see it properly. This is basically a speed graph. There are two graphs. One is speed graph, the other one is value graph. Speed graph shows the change in speed over time. So this is basically time, and this is speed. Okay. So speed graph shows change in speed over time. So this goes fast, and then it slows down here. Okay. And the value graph shows change in value over time. Okay. They are both different, but they are both effective. Okay. You cannot always use speed graph and you cannot always use value graph. So you have to learn both of them. But the rule of thumb for both of them is that the higher the curve, okay. So in speed graph, the higher the curve, faster the object. So this is going to be a fast, really fast. Okay. So let's see, so that you can understand. And I'm going to solo this so that you can focus only on this part. Okay. Let me change it for both of them. Now, as you can see, so this is a graph for this, which is start property. Now I want to change it for the end. Now, of course, doing this manually would take me so much time. Okay. And so to minimize that, what we can do is we can use plugins. Okay. So the not plugins, I'm going to say scripts. Okay. So I have so many scripts. I have collected so many scripts, bought so many scripts over the years. But one of the best script is called Ease Copy. Okay. It's absolutely free. And I'm going to just grab it, and then I'm going to dock it right here. I'm going to show you what it does. I'm going to just select them. Then I'm going to go to here, copy, and then I'm going to go here and then ease. Okay. And so we have ease them. Okay. As you can see, it's really quick. Okay. But of course, I don't want this. I'm just showing you the example. Okay. So that was speed graph, by the way. Now let's look at the value graph. So for the rule of thumb for the value graph is that the steeper the curve, okay, the steeper the curve, faster the object. Okay. Now what do you think happens to the object as the curve is not that steep? So the object here becomes slower, and that will be proven by our speed graph. See, speed graph has completely changed, and of course it looks scary, but don't worry. Okay. So whenever you make the reason why so many YouTubers don't mess with value graph is for this reason, is that whenever you make changes in the value, it might mess up the animation. Sometimes, not always, but you have to, but these are the fundamentals of speed graph and value graph. So I'm going to just press F9. So this is the point where this recording software that I was using suddenly stopped recording the video, but I record my voiceover in a different device. Okay. So what happened was that I still had the audio, but the video was missing. But from the audio, I was still able to figure out what was going on. Okay. And so from that, I'm going to show you what changes you need to make here. Okay. So that you can easily make changes and you can continue into the next lecture. Okay. But before that, I want you to see this as a creative challenge. Okay. So what you need to do is you don't have always to depend on people, on teachers. The person you need to depend on the most is yourself. Okay. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to give what you need to know from this point, I'm going to give that to you. Okay. But before that, you need to understand that the most important person in your life should be yourself, and you should be able to trust yourself. So if you get lost in the courses like this or in videos like this, you shouldn't quit. You should try to figure it out on your own. Okay. And that's the most important thing. Okay. But anyways, if you have any questions regarding this, okay, you can reach out to us on this email address. It's animatorsoasis@gmail.com. That's the first thing. Then the next change that you have to make is this. So this change that you have to make is in UFO underscore in. Okay. So this is why renaming is important. But don't worry, UFO underscore in is that beam that comes in. Okay. So here there are two properties that we animated so far. The first one is start, the second one is end. Okay. So the start property's first keyframe is going to be at second frame. Okay. So the second frame, just go to second frame and then place your keyframe there. The start's last keyframe is going to be on the 12th frame. Okay. The end. Okay. So end's first keyframe is going to be on the 0 frames, and the second keyframe is going to be on the 10th frame. Okay. And then what you do is you trim the UFO underscore in at the 7th frame. Okay. These are really important. So make sure that you trim at a specific frame. Okay. And then the next thing that I did was I basically offsetted this keyframes. Okay. And the reason why I did that is because the UFO was not getting aligned to the beam properly. Okay. And so that's why this offset was done. And all these changes were made because of the timing. Okay. But they are not set in stones. They will be changed in the future. But I don't want you to feel left out, and I don't want you to get confused as we move along. Okay. That's why I'm making this lecture. Okay. So position and scale. So both of their keyframes are going to be at the same locations. Position and scale's first keyframe is going to be at the 4th frame. Okay. The second keyframe on both of them, okay, is going to be on the 12th frame. Then rotation is slightly offsetted here. Okay. So the rotation's first keyframe is going to be on the 5th frame. The second keyframe is going to be on the 13th frame. Okay. And later, what I did was I also trimmed this and brought it to the 7th frame. Okay. So these two are basically trimmed on the same frame so that we can get the perfect match cut. Okay. And if you want, you can pause this and make changes. Okay. Now let's move on to the second change. Okay. So the second change that you have to make is you have to adjust all your graph like this. Okay. So just change your graph to this. So let me quickly walk you through what's happening here. Although this will be changed in the next lecture. Like I said, I don't want you to get confused. That's why I'm making this lecture. Okay. So here the UFO or the beam or this UFO underscore in will quickly go in and it will slow down. Okay. So this is really fast and then it slows down. Okay. And you have to apply this graph to start, end, position, scale, and rotation. Okay. So that's the next thing that you have to do. Okay. So this is the another thing that you have to add. So this is the same graph as that as well. Okay. Now these are the things that I covered in those 15 minutes that is missing. Okay. Still not working as it should. Okay. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here, and then we are going to make things work. Now consider this as a test of your ability to see what's happening here and look at the graph. And this is the point that I'm trying to prove here, that this graph is the most important part here. Okay. And so whenever things don't work in your favor, whenever you are animating, what you have to do is you have to do what the opposite of what you have been doing. Okay. And it's really that simple. Okay. So we are going to do opposite of what we are doing. Okay. So what's happening is that the reason why this is not working is because this beam should be longer at the end. Okay. But it is getting cut off or it's ending really slowly, it becomes shorter. So we want it to be longer at the end. Okay. So what should we do? We should do the exact opposite of what we have been doing. Okay. And so we change the graph to something like this. Now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go here, select them, see both of them, and then ease. Okay. So it becomes short at the first and then it becomes really huge at the end. And that's why I had to trim it because it was so short. And these are the issues that you will always run into. Okay. And so you don't have to worry about them. You just do the opposite of what you think. Okay. And of course, in animation, don't do that in real life. So now I'm going to adjust the timing. So I'm going to bring this at, I think, 15 frames. I'm going to bring this here. Now I'm going to change this to, now I'm also going to change this to, I'm going to ease them again. And then I'm going to drag this handles, this one as well. I'm going to drag this and this. And let's see what's happening here. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of the solo. I'm going to move this to somewhere like this. Then I'm going to trim this to here. Okay. So the problem is solved. Now I'm going to trim this here and then I'm going to trim this here. I'm going to break this just a little bit back. Now I'm going to make a change to this. Okay. So what if we do the same thing here, but the opposite? Okay. So I'm going to select every keyframe. Then I'm going to right click keyframe assistant, easy ease. Then I'm going to only change the position keyframe. Okay. So if you want to see how change will affect, you can also make change to the graph and it will show you what's happening and what's not. Okay. So as you can see, I can tell this graph is going to work wonders. Now I'm going to select this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste this. Okay. I'm going to select this and then paste this. Okay. Now I'm going to bring these keyframes a little bit ahead like this. Okay, so we have a smooth animation. Okay, the first part of the animation is done, as you can see. Now we are going to start animating the next part. But before that, I'm going to give them a label. So I'm going to give this purple. I'm going to give this red because it's really important. I'm going to give this green because UFO is a green flag, by the way. Not UFO. Null control is a green flag. As you can see, the keyframes are in between. So whenever a keyframe is in between, you should always keep it at the edge. So what is happening is this is frame. This is 16th frame and 17th frame. Now, whenever the keyframe is in between, graphs mess up. Of course, it's not like there are no like serious consequences, but I think you should always keep that in mind. So in this lecture, what we are going to do is we are going to create that shake that we need. Okay. So I'm going to go 10 frames ahead by pressing shift page down and then I'm going to keyframe position and rotation. Okay. Now I'm going to go 10 frames ahead and then I'm going to slightly change the position manually. Okay. So I'm just going to change it to something like this. It has to be slight. Okay. It doesn't have to be too abrupt. Make sure it's not too abrupt. Okay. Because if it's too abrupt, it's going to move out of the place and the wave that we're going to create, we have to keyframe that as well. So I'm going to change this to something like this. Now I'm going to go 10 frames ahead, and then I'm going to grab this keyframe. I'm going to copy this, paste this. Then I'm going to go 10 frames ahead. Then I'm going to copy this and paste this. Then I'm going to go 10 frames ahead, and then I'm going to manually change this. I'm going to change this to something like this. Now I'm going to go 10 frames ahead. Then I'm going to Control C, Control V. Okay. And then I'm going to select these keyframes. I'm going to label them to something like orange. Okay. So these are all the main keyframes. Okay. And these are all the keyframes that are being repeated. Okay. And it's for my sake. You don't have to do that, because if you are using an older version of After Effects, you might not have this. And so if you don't have that, that's completely fine. So let's preview this. So it goes something like this. Okay. Now see an issue. Did you see an issue? See this and this. Okay. Now that issue occurs due to keyframe of position. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the position property. Now I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to go into keyframe interpolation, and then I'm going to go to spatial interpolation. So these are all the interpolations. Okay. So temporal interpolation affects how a property changes over time. So this is basically temporal is about time, spatial is about space. Okay. So I'm going to change this to linear and hit OK. Okay. Now let's see if that made a difference to our animation. Okay. So it doesn't. Now this animation is too slow. Okay. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to drag them to something like this. So it becomes faster. Okay. See, if you want it to be more abrupt, you can of course make it more abrupt by dragging it even further like this. See, now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to create the final animation. So this one is the entrance animation. This one is the middle animation. So UFO came in, it tried to absorb whatever that is lying on the ground. It miserably failed, and it went back to its home. Okay. That's the basic story of this. So I'm going to press shift page down. Now I'm going to drop keyframes on this. Okay. Now I'm going to select the UFO in. Okay. I'm going to just see it, and then I'm going to duplicate this by pressing Control D. Then I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to bring that here by pressing this shortcut. Okay. Or you could just manually drag it. Okay. Let me show you how to drag it. So all you have to do is just press shift and then just bring it at the start of the keyframe. Okay. So it goes something like this. Now, of course, I don't want that. I want it to go from here to here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the pen tool. Then I'm going to select this point, and then I'm going to just change it to something like this. Okay. Of course, we are going to make so many changes here. And I'm going to change it to something like this. Okay, now I'm going to press U. Now I want to reverse the keyframes. Okay, so basically this is coming in. I don't want that. I want this UFO in to be UFO out. So I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it UFO underscore out. Okay, so I want it to go out. So how do we do that? How do we reverse this keyframe? So in After Effects, whenever you right click, you go to keyframe assistant, you toggle down at the end, and there is this time reverse keyframes. If you remember that in the beginning I said you should always begin with the end, and even if you mess up, you can always use this keyframe, use this time reverse keyframe to adjust the issues that will arise. Okay, and so even if you don't like it, you should always start with the end. Okay, so in the previous lecture, we created this, and now in this lecture, we are going to animate the exit or the out animation of the UFO. Okay, and so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change this rotation. Okay, so that I want to create anticipation here. Okay, so anticipation is a principle of animation which is like a pre-action. Okay, so for example, if you are going for a high five with someone, you are going to get your hand backward and then you are going to go for a high five. Okay, so your hand going backwards is called pre-action, and it shows that you are going for a high five. Okay, and that is what anticipation looks like in animation as well. Okay, and so I want to create that. So how do we do that? So I'm going to make subtle change to this one. Okay, so I'm going to change it to something like this. Okay, now I'm going to copy this keyframes value. I'm going to just paste this here. Okay, but I'm going to exaggerate even further, and I'm going to make this a little bit exaggerated. So we have an animation like this. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move 10 frames ahead. Okay, and to do that, the shortcut is shift page down. Okay, so I'm going to press shift page down, and then I'm going to go 2 frames ahead. So we have like 12 frames of animation. So page down, and let me go 3 frames. Okay, page down. Now I'm going to drop keyframes here, and then I'm going to go back to this keyframes, and then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4 frames ahead. I'm going to hide this for now, and I'm going to select UFO control, and then I'm going to bring it back. Okay, and now I'm going to change the rotation to make it even more exaggerated. So here it's going to fly back. And now when it flies back, for example, we have it something like this. Okay, so when it flies back, I'm going to change the scale to something like this. Now, of course, this is like really random. I'm not paying attention to the proportions because I want to exaggerate, and then after exaggerating I'm just adjusting the rotation. Okay, so if you didn't see that, you can just go back on your video players and you will be able to see that. Okay, and so it goes swish. Okay, now I'm going to change the position of this. Okay, at the final frame, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to just grab that, and it doesn't work because the null is too small. So I'm going to just manually bring that here. Now I'm going to copy this keyframe, which is scale, and then I'm going to Control C, Control V. Now I'm going to rotate this. Okay, and so we have an animation like this. Okay, so it it goes back and then boom. Okay, now I'm going to turn this layer on. Okay, and now the next thing that we do is we basically match everything with the UFO. Okay, whenever you are animating projects like this, what you might do is you might be too focused on the UFO out, meaning the secondary element. Okay, so there are two elements. The first element is the UFO, which is the primary element. Then there is secondary element, which is UFO in and UFO out. We are basically using them to show our audience how quick the UFO is. Okay, but they are not as crucial as the UFO. Okay. And so you have to remember that. Okay. And so these are variables. Okay. They can be changed easily, but changing this would take a lot of work. Okay. So make sure that whenever you are animating this, you animate them in reference to your primary object and not vice versa. Okay. So you don't change your animation as you change this. Okay. I mean, you don't change the animation of the UFO control based on this. You change this animation based on this animation. Okay. And so I'm going to go at this frame, and then I'm going to press G to activate the pen tool. Okay. Now I'm going to bring that here, and I'm going to bring this here. I'm going to make this like this. Okay. And so we have an animation like this. Of course, the timing is bit off, not bit, it's off. And so I'm going to change the timing. Okay. By just adjusting the layer for now. Okay, so we have something like this. Now, of course, the easing and the animation needs to work. So I'm going to go into the easing of this. That's completely fine. But this easing is the most important part. Okay, and it's going to be a bit complicated. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to open up the graph editor. The shortcut for graph editor is Shift F3. Okay, or you could just click here. Now I'm going to of course the graph looks intimidating. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, but I hope you get the point. Okay. And so to make it mm, a little bit a little scary, we can look at each properties at a time. So first of all, we are going to work on the position property. Okay. So as you can see here, the final position speed is 0, right? See, it says 0 pixels per second. The px is pixel. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on this. So when you double click on this dialog box opens up, which is called keyframe velocity. Okay, so this basically shows the velocity of keyframe. This is incoming velocity and this is outgoing velocity. Okay, and now you have to check this. So what this does is that this box allows us, checking this box allows us to keep this incoming velocity and outgoing velocity at the same level. Okay, but if we don't check that, what happens is that it will change. So this could be incoming velocity and this could be outgoing velocity. And what it's going to do is that it's going to create instability in the movement. Okay, and we don't want that. And to prevent that, what we do is we click on the continuous, which keeps the incoming velocity and outgoing velocity at the same value. Okay, and then I'm going to hit OK. And now, as I said earlier, I don't want the speed to be at 0. Okay, and so there is this movement which could be subtle. That's completely fine, but I don't want there to I don't want it to stop. Okay, then I'm going to bring this graph like this. Okay, so it's going to speed up like really quick, and then I'm going to change this to this. Okay, so let's see slowly what's happening here. Now I think I see a little problem here. Okay, so I'm going to change this rotation just a little bit. So we have some movement like this. Okay, we go from here, then we go here. Okay, like this, and then we have the movement. Okay, for now I'm going to hide this. Okay, and now let's walk on the rotation properties graph. Okay, so we are going to do the same thing. I'm going to double click here. I'm going to check in the continuous, and then I'm going to bring up the graph like this. Okay, so what I want is I want it to go really quick here. like this, and then I want it to be quick where it flies out. Okay, so like this, right? Now we are going to do the same thing here, but as you can tell, the scale, the graph editor of the scale looks different than others. See, because there are red and green values. Okay, so because these are both the axis, okay, x axis and y axis are represented by different colors. Okay, that's the only difference, but don't worry. So what we are going to do is I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to check in the continuous. Now look at the dialog box. Now this dialog box is completely different. Okay, so here we have log dimensions, and then okay, so keep everything as it is. Okay, and then I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to bring this like this. So it's quick, right? And now we haven't made any change to the end. Okay. So for that, I'm going to turn this on for now. Okay. And then I'm going to bring this. I'm going to activate pen tool by pressing G. And then I'm going to change this to something like this. Okay. Now, like I said, make changes in the reference of the UFO and not in the graph and not in the other secondary elements, right? So make sure that you remember that. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to just adjust the timing of it. So I'm going to bring this a little closer. And so let's look at it so that we can at least know what's happening. Okay. So the problem here is that the ray or the UFO out is quicker. Okay. So how do we solve this problem? So we solve this problem by using the timing. So what we are going to do is we are going to bring this a little back. Okay. And so I'm going to bring this here. So we have something like this. Okay. And I think this is fine. Okay. Now I haven't changed the rotation, but before that I'm going to go into the graph editor of the ray. Okay. So I'm going to select the keyframes. I'm going to go into the graph editor, and what's happening is that it's really quick at the start and then it slows out. Okay. So what happened if we do the opposite, like I said before? So I'm going to easy ease that again. Okay. I'm going to just select these keyframes and then I'm going to just change the handles like this. Okay. And so it becomes slow. Okay. And this might not work. I'm not sure it might work because as you can see, it starts at really slow, but we don't want that, right? And so I'm going to undo this and I'm going to just select one property. For example, I'm going to select with start, then I'm going to just bring this here and I'm going to change this value to something like this. It's not a hard curve now, right? So I'm going to just copy this and then I'm going to paste this. Okay. So let's see. Okay. It's not as hard as it used to be. And I'm also going to change the point of the like the graph where it starts, not the graph UFO out. So I want it to start from here. Okay. And then it as it goes here, I want to change the size of it even further. I'm going to bring it like this. And then I'm just going to delete this. Then I'm going to go at that frame by pressing shift and then I'm just going to paste this. Okay. And so we have something like this. Now the timings are not matching yet and that's completely fine. So I'm going to move this a little back Okay, so here it's matching. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim these layers at this point. Okay, so to trim, use this shortcut, or you could do it manually as well. You could just go here, change the cursor changes automatically, and then you press shift and then it appears here. Okay, and now I'm going to trim this layer as well. Okay, so let's see. See, now what we are going to do is we are going to change the graph and in a way that we can see the values live. Okay, so I want to match this part. Okay, so let's see what. See, now it looks much better than it used to. Now we are going to make change to this. I'm just going to offset it by few frames. I'm going to just bring it in. Okay, like this. Okay, so let's see. See, now we have a hard stop here. Okay, so I don't like that. See, it's like it looks like as if there is a pause. Okay, look it carefully. So I'm going to press B. So B is for work area start and work area end. Okay, so these are both the work area start and work area end. This region is called work area. Okay, now when I press B, okay, it brings the work area start here, and so and then when I press N, it brings work area N at the current time indicator. Okay, so it helps us to only preview this part. Okay, so I'm going to just play, and as you can see there is bit pause here, right? It's not smooth. Okay, so we need it to be smooth. Okay, so I'm going to just offset these keyframes and then look at it and it's smooth. Okay, now I'm going to just drag this out like this, and now I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to manually scale it. Okay, and then I'm going to change the position as well. Of course, don't worry about the keyframe that is being created here. Okay, I'm going to show you. Now I'm going to just match the beam here, and now I'm going to just amp it up a little bit like this. Okay, now I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to just bring this here. Okay, and then I'm going to press my favorite shortcut, and let's see. Okay, this one is working in a much better way than I expected. But of course, the problem is that the UFO and the beam are appearing at the same time, which we don't want. So I'm going to just trim this here. Okay. See, this process is mostly trial and error. Okay, no matter how skilled you are, you could always make mistakes. Let's say that you are confused about trimming. Like you want to trim layers, but you don't know how or where to trim. Okay, so I'm going to press Shift F3 to open up the graph editor. And I'm going to show you a technique on how to trim layers, okay, or where to trim layers, okay. So whenever you are working on a match cut, or just whenever you are going for transitions, what you have to watch is this, okay. So this is basically a peak, okay. These are all the peaks. So this is the quickest point of animation. And as you can see, this frame is in between, okay. So we cannot do anything about that. And so what I'm going to do is, of course, see, the point here is at top. I don't want that. I want it to stop. So I'm going to just bring that below. Right. I don't know why that happened. So this point is basically a point where you can trim. Okay. So that is the safest point. Now let's look at this graph. Okay. So in this graph, this point is also the safest to cut. Okay. So wherever like there is a huge peak, P-E-A-K, not P-I-C-K. English is not my primary language. I think this scale is a bit too small. I'm going to just get rid of this, and then I'm going to move this here. Okay. So, like I was saying, that this process is a trial and error. Okay. Nobody gets it right the first time. Everybody has to like go through some phases of trial and error, which is completely fine. Okay. This is how we learn. Okay. So let's see. Okay, the animation is looking really nice. And if you want to see it even in a much better light, you could just go frame by frame. Now, I don't think you can see the difference, but I'm just going to extend this layer. Okay, I'm going to just select them and then extend them so that I can show you the problem. Okay, so the problem that I'm facing right now is with rotation. See, the rotation is a bit too much and then it goes back. I don't like this. And it's happening because of the values. So I'm going to just copy and paste it. Okay. And then I'm going to change it manually. And I think it's going to create the same issue again. Okay. So it goes something like this. So what we can do? So how do we solve this issue? Okay. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to make this a bit like this. And also at this point, I think when uh like I'm going to try and add an effect called squash and stretch. So I'm going to just squash it a little bit, not too much. I think this might be too much. So I'm going to squash it a little. Okay. And then I'm going to trim this. And sometimes what happens is After Effects has always this extra frame. Okay. So I'm going to just get rid of that. And then I'm going to look at the animation. Okay, now when it goes here, it's really quick. Okay, so what we can do is we can offset this part to see how it looks. So when you offset it, it looks nice, but I think this point is bit too exaggerated. Okay, I don't want that, so I'm going to just expand it like this. I want to give the feeling of speed, right? And now it looks as if it's moving towards the screen, which is I think is much better. So I'm going to keep it, but I think I'm going to change this value just a little bit. I want to see the difference between the values. Okay, now one thing that I don't like is how this turn is happening. This turn should be quick. Okay, so see, it's really slow. It's really slow. So I don't like the animation between these two keyframes. Okay, so I'm going to select the rotation property. Then I'm going to go into the graph editor. Then I'm going to zoom in. And to zoom anywhere in graph, all you have to do is just press Z and then click on it and it will be zoomed. Now look at the graph here. Like it's really bad. Okay, so I'm going to change it to something like this. I want it to be abrupt, like really abrupt. Okay, and so I'm going to make it have a peak. Okay, so see, now can you see the difference? I'm going to press 0 to play. I'm going to just expand it little further so that you can see. Now if you want to like add even more like life to it, what you can do is you can just select this part, then you can just, so it goes really quick. And then there is this pause, dramatic pause. Okay, and then there is this movement. Now of course I'm looking at the graph of this orange keyframes. I don't like them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them except the last two keyframes, and then I'm going to go to, not this, I think I'm going to only change the property on the rotation property. So I'm going to just select them, right click, and then easy ease. Okay. And so let's see. So we added a dramatic depth to it. And if you want to add even more depth, even more life to it, what you can do is you could just exaggerate this part. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just change. Okay. I accidentally selected everything. So I'm going to just change this to this. And then we have something like this, that it goes and then boom. So that we are done with the basic of animation. So in the next lecture, we are going to create a wave. Okay. Now there is this big problem in this as well. Okay. So this should have been trimmed at the first. Okay. So I think I missed that. In this lecture, we are going to create the wave that will emitted from this exhaust that we have already created. Okay. And during this orange keyframes, that wave will be emitted and it will try to absorb like a human or anything, but it will fail and then it will go away. That's the basic storyline of this animation. But how do we do that? So After Effects has many effects for that. So for that, we are going to create a new composition. So you create a new composition by clicking on this icon, and then I'm going to call this wave. Then the size is going to be 1080 by 1080. The duration is going to be 10 seconds long, and then keep everything as it is. Then I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to move this into 00PC. Now I'm going to create new shape layer. Now when you create a new shape layer, it's going to be empty. And After Effects gives you an ability to add shapes to shape layer. So all this you can see are the basic shapes, right? So I'm going to add in polystar. Okay. Then I'm going to add in gradient fill. Okay. Now, once that is done, I'm going to, so this star that you see is basically a triangle. Okay. So see, like these are all the points, but I don't want that. I just want a triangle, and then I'm going to just rotate it at 90 degrees. Okay, so we have something like this. Now I'm going to just turn that off, and then I'm going to just manually place it here at the edge, and then I'm going to change the anchor point of that. I'm going to change the anchor point at the bottom, then I'm going to bring it here, and then I'm going to scale it like this. Okay. Now, if you want to change like ramp, you could change it from here. Okay. So let me walk you through fill options. So this is none. This is solid color, which is a hue. Okay. It's not going to be gradient. This is linear gradient. This is a linear gradient. Then there is radial, which is going to be a circular, right? But we don't want that. We want this. Okay. Then I'm going to add in an effect called wave warp. Okay. And that effect will help us in creating the wave. Okay. So I'm going to type in wave, and then under distort option, I'm going to select this, and then you can apply effects by two ways. You can just either double click or you could just drag and drop. Okay. And so we have the wave. Okay. But this wave doesn't look really nice, so we are going to make few changes to it. Okay. So first of all, wave type, these are all the wave types. Okay. Triangle, this is square, this is sine, then this is going to be wave height. Okay. This is wave width, which shows the width of the wave. Okay. I'm going to just expand it like this, then I'm going to play around with the wave height. Okay. So wave warp or any effect is not set in stone. So if you don't like it right now, it's okay. You can work on it, and at the end you can change the animation as well. Okay. So I'm going to keep the direction as it is. This is basically a direction of wave. Okay. As you can tell, it messes up, but I don't want to change the direction. The direction is perfect. Then there is wave speed. You can either increase or decrease the wave speed, and based on that, you will have uh, like certain differences. Okay, see, this is really slow. This one is really, like, it's not slow, it's not really quick as well. Okay, then there is this spinning. This one is the most important property. Okay, so these are all the edges: left edge, top edge, right edge, bottom edge. Okay, so basically the whenever if the none is selected, the wave won't be pinned. By pinned, what I mean is that it will be stuck, it won't move from this point. Okay, so I'm going to select left edge, and as you can see the difference, right? When the pinning is set to none, the wave is starting from this point. Okay, and it's distorting this part as well, but I don't want that, right? I want it to stuck at a certain edge, and that's why we have this option, left edge, and then we have an effect like this. Okay, so this is our wave, and although it looks like really difficult to achieve, but it's really nice and easy to achieve wave warp. Okay, and then I'm going to go to main composition. Okay, then I'm going to press U to see the keyframes. Okay, then I'm going to go to project panel. Now I'm going to bring in the wave. Okay, now I'm going to enter -90, and then I'm going to just adjust the wave accordingly. Okay, now I'm going to scale it up. Now I think this wave is, I think, is too like wide, so I'm going to just make it a little less wide. Okay, now I'm going to place it behind the exhaust or behind the UFO, and so we have something like this. Okay, so let's look at the animation. So it goes, and then we have, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to animate the wave, right? So look at this point. Okay, so this is the point where the UFO stops here and it starts like emitting this wave. Okay, so this point is the point where the wave will be visible. Okay, but before you animate, like I said, before you animate, always set up your anchor point. So I'm going to select the pen tool by pressing Y, not the pen tool. I'm going to select the pen behind tool. Okay, and then I'm going to just bring this up here. Now I'm going to press S to bring up the scale. I'm going to unlink this. Okay, now I'm going to drop the keyframe. Then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 keyframes ahead. And then I'm going to drop another keyframe. So I'm beginning with the end. Then I'm going to go at the start. And then I'm going to just bring this to 0. Okay, so the UFO comes in, it emits this. Okay, and see the point from where it is being emitted. Okay, it comes in, and then there is this emission. Okay, now I'm going to just adjust the keyframe like this. Okay, so it's really quick. I think is like this should be quick. Okay, so I'm going to make it like 4 frames, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so I'm going to bring that here. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just push it here. Now I'm going to go into the wave, and then I'm going to just make it even less wide. Then I'm going to go back, and this one looks decent. Okay, but I think I have issues with the wave width. Okay, so I'm going to change that. So I'm going to bring this to something like this. I'm going to change the value of this to something like 41, I guess. Okay, now let's go back. And so if you want to open it, so this is a flow chart, by the way. And this flow chart is, it can be opened by pressing tab. So whenever you press tab, anywhere you are, you will have this. And then these are basically, this shows you the pre-comp. Okay, so this is the main comp, and this is the pre-comp, that is this comp. Okay, And so you don't have to just go here and then navigate and then you click on this and then you open that up. All you have to do is just press tab and then you are in that comp. Okay. And so let's look at this. So this one is much decent. This looks much better. Okay. Now let's animate the end animation as well. Okay. So wave rotate, like the UFO rotates from this point. Okay. So it should get like, it should get rid of the scale from this point. So I'm going to press Control C, Control V, not Control C. I meant Control C. So then I'm going to select this. Then I'm going to right click, keyframe assistant, and time reverse the keyframe. So basically it reverses the keyframes. Okay. And then let's see. So as it rotates, so let's look at the animation. So we have the wave animation ready. Okay, so in this lecture, what we did is we animated the wave. And in the next lecture, we are going to animate the exhaust. So now I want to animate the exhaust, okay? But the problem is that I don't want to manually keyframe the exhaust. What I want is I want to use a shortcut. And After Effects allows us to use shortcuts, like not literally shortcuts, but by shortcut, what I mean is that an easier approach. Okay. So After Effects allows us to have mechanisms which we call expressions, and these expressions are written in code. Okay. And so this code allows us to execute complicated animations in an easy and efficient way. I am an engineer, but I am not an expert at coding, especially in HTML, which I think is used in After Effects coding. Okay. And so if you are someone like me, don't worry about that. I have found an easy solution. So I'm going to go to Gemini and then I'm going to type in here. Okay. So create expression for the wiggle of position property in After Effects. Wiggle must be abrupt. It's as if the UFO's bottom part is basically releasing a beam, but make it subtle. Okay. And then I'm going to just, okay. So this is the expression. Okay. So let's see what happens. So I'm going to copy this code. Okay, I'm going to go into After Effects, then I'm going to press Alt. Okay, so now to apply the expressions in After Effects, what you do is you press Alt and then click, and it adds or removes the expressions as it says here. Okay, so I'm going to click on Add and then I'm going to add an expression. I'm going to press Control V, and so we have this expression. Now let's look at this. Okay, so this one is nice, but I think this might be a bit too slow. Okay, so we can make changes to the expressions. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and then I'm going to tell Gemini to make it a bit more abrupt. Okay, so it gives me a different expression. Of course, you can just, you know, try different things with the values here, but I don't want to do that. Okay, so let's see. So it looks as if it is releasing the beam, but I think I want it to be more. So I want this value to be different. So I want this to be more abrupt. So I'm going to change this value to 10 as well. And let's see. Okay, this one is really nice. I like this a lot. Okay. But for now, I don't know. I don't know why, but I don't like the exhaust. Okay, so I'm going to just scale it down just a little bit. So let's see. I think, and then in order to see expression, just press E on layers and you will be see expression. Okay, just press E double two times and then you will be able to see expressions. Okay, so I think this might be too much. So I'm going to go with, I think, 8. Okay. No, I don't like this. And so I'm going to just, and I already had this. Okay. And so I'm going to select this and then I'm going to copy, and then you press Control V, and so we have, okay, so this is too much, so I'm going to just change it from 3 and 6. Okay, because that was too abrupt. So let's see. Okay, yeah, this one looks really nice. Let's look at it from a distance. Okay, so now we have the animation in exhaust as well. Okay, but when exhaust is animating, the wave is still. So they both look different, right? The wave and exhaust should be at a same frequency, right? So what we can do is we are going to add in expressions. Now, of course, you might be thinking that I should just parent exhaust to wave. Don't do that. That's not going to work. And so I'm going to add in expression. I'm going to just copy this, and then I'm going to paste this here. Okay, now let's look at the animation. Okay, see, it's literally looking wild. Okay, and I like it. Now I think I'm going to change the scale on exhaust. Now if you think this is too much, what you can do is, for example, here it's, see, this is the problem. So I basically entered the wrong expression. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste this. Okay, and so we have some animation like this. Now I'm going to go at the wave, then I'm going to move this up, right? Now I think the wave is like crazy, and I don't want that. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to keyframe the position property of the wave as well. Okay, and so I'm going to just press U to see it. Okay, and then I'm going to just add in the keyframe here. Then I'm going to add in the keyframe here. I'm going to bring it at the center. Then I'm going to so I'm going to basically align everything visually. Of course, it's random. You should do this, but it's completely random. Then I'm going to bring that in. This will do two things. First, it will make things look better, and it will also tame the like wild wiggle that was taking place. Okay, because it really looked like a bit too much. So I don't want that. Then I'm going to just change it to here. And then we have the exit. So I'm going to place it here. Okay. Now let's look at the animation. Okay, this one is looking really better than what I expected. Okay, now I'm going to go into the wave, and then I'm going to change in the value of the gradient. Okay, so this is basically a midpoint. Okay, this is a color stop, this is a color stop. Basically these are the two values of the different gradients, like this is black, this is white, and this is midpoint that controls everything. Okay, I don't know why that happened. So I'm going to just change this to this. Okay, and I'm going to go back in, and this one looks much better. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come here where I can see the wave. Then I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate this. Now I'm going to add in an effect called transform. Okay, so this is a transform effect under a distort category. So transform effect basically allows us to, it basically gives us all these properties that are already in, like for example, position, rotation. Okay, so these are all the transform properties, but transform effect gives us additional controls. Okay, now I'm using this effect because I've already animated the scale property, right? And so if I change the scale, it will distort the animation as well, and I have to do some additional work, and I don't want to do that. And so to prevent that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use the transform property. transform effect. And then I'm going to just, so this is anchor point, position, this is uniform scale for scale, and then this is skew, this is skew axis, rotation, opacity, shutter angles, sampling, I don't know what that is. But anyways, these are all the basic transform properties that we have in After Effects in under a layer. Okay, so I'm going to just uncheck this, and then I'm going to change the scale height. Okay, and then I'm going to create a background. Okay, and to create a background, I'm going to go right click, new, solid. And so this is a solid. Solid is basically a background in like a layer. And then I'm going to just bring it at the bottom. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this BG. I should have done this before, but that's completely fine. Okay, now I'm going to select both of them, and then I'm going to change the blending mode to something like this, or you could change something like this, or overlay, whatever you like. Okay, I'm going to go with lighten or add. You could also like go wild with this. Okay, if you want to go wild, what you can do is you can add in an effect called fill. So fill basically allows us to change the color. I'm going to double click on it, but that doesn't work. And so it gives this effect, which is, I think, is scary. And I'm going to change the opacity. Okay, if you want, you can also make it blue, but I don't want that. Let's make it subtle. Okay, and let's place it on the back. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we have an animation like this. Okay, really simple, really neat, really tidy and easy. Okay, so in this lecture, we are going to create a land. And how do we do that? So first of all, I'm going to lock the layers that I don't need anymore so that I don't select them accidentally. I'm going to select them as well. And then, so this basically locks everything. Okay, it prevents layers from being edited accidentally. Okay, so I'm going to just lock it. And now I'm going to create a land. And how do we do that? So I'm going to create a new solid. The shortcut for new solid is Control Y. Okay, so I'm going to press Control Y, and then I'm going to call this ground and then hit OK. Now I'm going to hide this. Okay, and then I'm going to select the pen tool. Now I'm going to start by creating a mask. Okay, so basically pen tool helps us create this masks. And then I'm going to just close it. And then I'm going to turn this on. Now I'm going to zoom in so that I can see clearly. I'm going to play around here and make it look decent. Okay. Now I'm going to add in an effect called roughen edges. As the name suggests, it helps us roughen the edges. How poetic. Okay. So I'm going to just play around with the value. Okay. Until I get what I want. It should look authentic. It doesn't have to look like it's just solid layer with a mask on it. It should look good, right? And so I'm going to just zoom out so that I can see properly. I'm going to bring this layer out. Okay. Now I'm going to, so I'm going to just bring in this. So this is the anchor point. I'm going to bring it at the center. And if you want to bring it to the center, you press Y, which activates the pen behind tool, pen behind anchor point tool, then you bring it here. Okay, now if you don't want to do that, if you are someone like me who loves shortcut, then you press Control Alt Home. Okay, now I'm just going to move this up. Okay, I'm going to, now this bounding box is bothering me. Okay, so this mask is like I cannot see what's happening here, right? I have to always uncheck. So This is basically called a bounding box, although it's mask, but it's called bounding box. So how do we get rid of that for a while? Okay, so the shortcut for that is Control Shift H. Okay, and so the bounding box is gone. Now I can play around with the property and it won't bother me, right? See, this looks authentic. Now I'm going to scale it down and then I'm going to place it up like this. See, now this looks like a land. Okay, so we have the ground ready. Now the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to add in the elements. For example, the first element is, it could be a cow. Okay, now of course, if you haven't noticed, I cannot now I cannot see the bounding box on any layers, which sounds troublesome. And to activate it back, you press Control Shift H. Okay, and this shortcut was the one thing that took me really long to find, because I always struggled with it a lot, and I don't know how I found it or what it's called in After Effects, but I'm pretty sure it's called bounding box, and I don't know where the original settings are. I'm going to just push this here. Now I'm going to import. Here you could import many things, and at the end we are going to have some fun with it. But for now, I'm going to import the cow. Okay. So I'm going to find the cow. I don't know where the cow is. Okay. Here. There she is. So I'm going to import the cow. Okay. Now I'm going to bring that cow here. I'm going to resize it, place it here. Okay. I'm going to make it smaller. Now, of course, I don't like that color. I want everything to be silhouette. Don't make fun of my English, okay? So, English is not my primary language. I hope you can tell. I'm sure you can tell. Then I'm going to add in fill effect. Okay, so fill effect allows us to change the color. Then I'm going to add in this. And so we have our cow ready. See? I'm going to make some changes to the ground, okay? I think I'm going to bring this a little bit up. And then I'm going to move this like this. Move this like this. Okay. So we have animated the UFO. Now we have animated the wave, and then we have animated the cow. Of course, we haven't animated the cow, and we are not going to. We don't need to. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to animate the rock. Okay, so the rocks will be floating up, but I think I'm going to adjust the cow because the cow is on the edge. I'm going to bring it below. I'm going to resize it to something like this. Okay. So it's like a UFO is trying to abduct a cow, but it fails, right? And you can also add whatever you want. You can add a man, you can add a dinosaur, you can add a girl, whatever it is that you want. Okay. I want to bring this up just a little bit. You can also feather it if you want. So feather basically feathers. And let's see what feathering does. Okay, it looks nice. What it does without it. So I'm going to just do that again. I'm going to feather it. Okay, it's not that great, but this one looks nice. Okay, I'm going to scale up the cow. And then I'm going to get rid of the feather because I don't think it's working for me. I'm going to press Control Shift H. And then I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to bring this up like this. Okay. So we have the most part of our animation done. It's looking really nice. So in this lecture, we are going to create the rocks that floats up. And so I'm going to first of all lock
every layer that I don't need anymore, except for this layer, because I use it as a reference. Okay, so if you get lost on about the timing, you could just zoom in and see what's happening. Okay, so this is basically our central layer for everything, and we navigate the timing based on this layer. Okay, and so whenever you get confused about the timing, the primary layer will always guide you on what to do. Anyways, now we are going to create the rocks that floats up. Okay, and don't worry about this look and feel, we are going to work on that, but for now let's create rocks. And so I'm going to just select this pen tool. Now I'm going to create a random shape. Okay, so I'm going to hide the cow for now. And I'm going to bring the fill to 0. I'm going to change the fill to solid color. I'm going to change this to black. I'm going to recenter the anchor point by pressing Ctrl Alt Home, and then I'm going to look at the shape by pressing Ctrl Shift H. Okay, it looks nice. Now I'm going to press Ctrl Shift H to reactivate the bounding boxes. Then I'm going to go to ground. I'm going to go to effects control, then I'm going to Control C this, and then Control V. Okay, then I'm going to just make it a bit subtle. Okay, so we have something like this. It should look like a rock. Okay, so this is rock 1. Now I'm going to place it here. Okay, I'm going to open up the UFO control to see the timing of it, and so the wave opens up here. Okay, it opens up at this point, and so the animation for the rock begins from this. So I'm going to first of all rename this. We always rename. I'm going to call this rock 1. Now I'm going to turn on the cow so that it doesn't look as if it's coming from the cow, right? And so I'm going to press P to open up the position property. Then I'm going to go 10 frames ahead, shift page down, and shift page down. So I'm going to go at least 30 frames, and then I'm going to just bring that up here. Okay, now I'm going to reorder this by I'm going to place it at the back of the exhaust. Now I'm going to press U to bring up the keyframes. Then I'm going to just guide it here. Okay, so okay, we have an animation like this. Now I'm going to press P to bring up the position. Then I'm going to click on this toggle, and then I'm going to copy this keyframe, copy these expressions, and then I'm going to paste the expression here, and I'm going to see whether it's working or not. Okay, it's working, but it's like too much. So I'm going to reduce it. So I'm going to change it to from 6 to 3. Okay, so we have an animation like this. Okay, it's funny. I'm going to place it here behind. Okay, it should not be visible to the audience. It doesn't have to be. Okay, so this animation is a bit slow, so I'm going to open up our reference. I'm going to select this, then I'm going to click on Alt, and then I'm going to drag this. Okay, so when you click on Alt, you will be able to drag it over time. Okay, then I'm going to go in the center, in the middle, Then I'm going to reduce its size. Okay, I'm going to reduce it even further. Now I'm going to duplicate this, then I'm going to press U. Now I'm going to just randomly change the keyframes. Okay, I'm going to go here, then I'm going to change this. Okay, then I'm going to go at the end and I'm going to place it at the end here. Now I'm going to change the timing a bit. Okay, it looks funny, but questionable, I guess. Should be. Now I'm going to just randomly change this position as well. I'm going to just place it here. I'm going to select this keyframe, I'm going to place it here. I'm going to select this keyframe, I'm going to place it here. Now I'm going to duplicate this again, then I'm going to press U, then I'm going to select this keyframe, or not every keyframe, I'm going to select this keyframe, I'm going to place it here. I'm going to change this keyframe to here. I'm going to change this keyframe to here. By the way, these points that you see are the keyframes, okay? These are not only position path points, they are also the keyframes, okay? So this one is this keyframe, right? You get the point, right? This one is this keyframe. Now I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to give them a different color. Now I'm going to press U. And I'm going to just play around with the keyframe and its timing. Okay, it doesn't have to reach there. You could also add leaves if you want, you could also add trees if you want, but I want this project to be like really fun. Okay, you don't have to like, it's not serious. That's the thing, it's fun. And that's the whole point about this class, right? Say, look how stupid it looks, but it makes sense, right? Because since everything is vibrating at a high frequency, the rocks that are going up are going to be vibrating at a high frequency. Although it's stupid, it looks nice and it looks valid, right? So, and if you want, you can also exaggerate. Okay, you can also make this cow go up, okay, if you want. I don't want to do that. I'm Indian, by the way, and so we love cows. Okay, and so let's exaggerate something. Let's do something different. Okay, so I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate this. Now I'm going to just change up the scale. I'm going to place this at the back. I'm going to change this value. Let's see if I haven't messed this up. Then I'm going to place this here. Okay, now I'm going to make this lower. So let's see what happens. Okay, right, this one looks bad, so I'm going to get rid of this. Apart from that, everything else looks nice, but I want like it to be a continuous process. So I'm going to just press Ctrl D to duplicate everything. Then I'm going to place everything at the top. Then I'm going to just offset them by few frames. Okay, so it looks as if it's an ongoing process. Okay, so let's look at it. See, so that's the whole point about this project, is that it's really simple. It's fun to be working on a project like this, right? And so we have now officially created the rock, and with that this project is almost done. Okay, so I'm going to just lock this up. Right now I'm going to bring the cow to the center. So I'm going to go to align, and then I'm going to align it to the center. Now let's work on wave. Okay, so I'm going to go to effects control, then I'm going to select this one. Now I'm going to mask this. I'm just trying things here, by the way. I'm going to change the blending mode to something like I don't know why it's not working. Okay, so we have changed opacity from this point, that's why it's not working. So I'm going to change this to this. I'm going to bring it on top. Okay, and so see, whenever you change color, the entire mood of the piece changes, right? You can tell from this point, like it becomes scary. Suddenly it's scary and you don't know why, but it is. And that's the point about colors. Like, colors are really important. If you haven't noticed it, colors are not to be messed with. Okay, they are not something that I think you should take lightly, especially as someone who is in a visual communication medium. Colors should be taken seriously. Okay, and I'm going to change the opacity to something like this. Okay, see, the tiny pinch of color makes a huge difference. Okay, a huge difference, and you can tell, right, like how huge that difference is. Now I'm going to select this four rocks. Okay, I'm going to duplicate them again. I'm going to bring them on top, and I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to bring them here. Okay, so we have more, like it's a continuous process, right? And so I'm going to just see how it looks. See, it looks really stunning, and the red here gives this really bad vibes, and I like it. I like it. It makes things scary. And if you want to like make it like fun, you could also add yellow. Okay, and it's going to change the mood. And that's why they, like, colors are the key of motion design. If you don't understand colors, I don't think you will be able to communicate with your audience. See, now we have yellow and everything, the mood changes, it shifts, right? It shifts really quickly. Okay, now to create a text, all you have to do is just click on this, or you could press Ctrl T, and then you just you paste. Okay, now I'm going to change the fonts to something like these are my favorite fonts, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to change this to UFOs. Now I'm going to just select this. I'm going to increase the scale of it. I'm going to select both of them. I'm going to go to paragraph. I'm going to change the paragraph to something like this. Okay, then I'm going to align it to the center. Now I'm going to change the size of it. Then I'm going to recenter the anchor point. Then I'm going to align it to the center. I think this might be too big. Okay, and then let's see the animation. Okay, this looks nice. It's stupid, it's funny, and it's amazing project. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to exhaust, and then I'm going to add in an effect called glow. Okay, now that one is deep glow, which is a paid plugin, and then we have glow. So glow is inbuilt After Effects effect, so I'm going to add in glow for now. But if you have deep glow, like, it's going to work wonders. Okay, so I'm going to just increase the value. Right, and so this is our project, and it's done. We are done with this.
Now, I'm going to show you how I created this cow animation, okay, and how I added the dino animation, okay. So, first of all, what you need to do is you need to pre-compose the cow, okay. So, the cow is pre-comped here, and then the the effect that is added on it is fills, okay. So, just make sure that this is done right, okay. Then this is the sound effect that I added on top of it. And now I want this cow to flow into this exhaust, okay, but without matte, okay, this won't be possible. Okay, so see what happens without the mat. Okay, so anyways, before you set up mat, you need to animate the position and the scale. Okay, so on the position, there are two simple keyframes. The first one is this, and the second one is that it goes up and then it disappears. Okay, so the last keyframe is that this. So I basically got rid of the constraint proportions here. Okay, and the last keyframe is going to be at 0. Okay, so it basically shrinks to 0. Okay, but before that it distorts. Okay, see, okay, it distorts to somewhere around here. Okay, and then it vanishes, but here it doesn't vanishes. And for that, what we need is we need a mat. Okay, so mat is a way to make things visible or invisible in certain region. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select this cow mat, and then if you are doing this manually, okay, sure, look, let me show you the shape. Okay, so the shape of this is just like this, and this shape is parented to exhaust. Okay, so that whenever we are having this movement, it will move with exhaust. Okay, because if this is not parented to exhaust, well, we might have some issues. Okay, and so this is the random shape that I created using the pen tool, nothing really fancy. Okay, and I'm going to just invert this. Okay, so it basically looks as if it is getting absorbed into the exhaust. Okay, so that's the first major change. Okay, and also the timing of these keyframes are in relevance or in reference to this orange keyframes. Okay, now I'm not sure about the graph editor, but I'm going to press shift F3. Okay, just to see the graph. Okay, so first one we have this. Okay, so I don't think I have adjusted graph on this. It is just the default one. Okay, now the next change that I made was to wave. Okay, apart from this there are not many changes. Okay, so what I did was I applied an effect called transform. Okay, and the reason why I applied an effect called transform is because we already animated the scale property on this. Okay, but what I wanted was I wanted to reduce the scale even further without changing the keyframe, right? Because that would, I mean, it won't take that long, but it will still take long. And I didn't want it to do it because there was another way. Okay. So this effect is called a transform effect. Let me go to effects and preset. Okay. And then I'm going to search for transform. It is under probably under distort. Okay. So this, all these properties are the same as this properties. Okay, but they are additional properties, meaning this properties will not affect this properties, but this property will affect this layer. Okay, but they won't affect this. Okay, so this is your like extra effect without pre-comping it. Okay, so I did that. And the next thing that I did was I just created a mask like this. Okay, a rectangular mask, and then I feathered it. Okay, so this is the feather. Okay, now the next thing that I did was I colored it. Okay, so how I did that? So to color, what I did was I applied fill effect, and then here I added two keyframes. Okay, so you can also see that the color goes from white to green. Green here shows that the mission this UFO was on is successful. Okay, and the another effect that I added to this was deep glow. Okay, I haven't changed it anything. It is as it is at default, by the way. Okay, and in the next lecture, I'm going to in the and next two lectures are going to go into this. Okay, I'm going to break down the entire project again in the next chapter, but I just wanted to show you how to make this. Okay, the next chapter is going to be focused on the principle of transition, and I don't worry if I miss anything. Okay, now what you have to do is, first of all, of course, rename this to UFO underscore cow, and then you duplicate it. Okay. Once you duplicate it, you bring in this green screen, which is available with the assets. Okay. If you have downloaded it, this will be in that. Okay. So once that is done, what you do is you pre-compose this. Okay. And then once it is pre-composed, or what you do is you duplicate the cow composition as well. Okay. And then, well, you just apply an effect called a key light. Okay, so key light allows us or helps us to get rid of the green screen. Okay, so all you have to do, so this is the state of the effect once applied. Okay, and then all you have to do is just pick the green color, and then you will have the effect ready. Okay, now what you do is you go to the duplicated pre-comp. Okay, so this UFO underscore cow is now duplicated, and then you rename it to dino. Okay, and then what you do is you basically replace cow with the dino. Okay, I meaning this cow with this dino. Okay, and that's how you got this. And the next thing that you have to remember is that you have to get rid of the animation of this as well. Okay, you just make sure that this animation is not applied to this animation. Okay, and also the color on this is going to be red. Okay, I haven't changed anything. Okay, the keyframes, even keyframes are not eased here. Okay, we don't need that. Okay, so that's how we do it. And the next thing that you do is you bring them into main composition. Okay, and then you just compile them. Okay, adjust them one by one into a sequence that looks and feels like a story. Okay, and then at the end I have this really simple title. Okay, nothing really out of the blue. Okay, and well, it's done. Okay, so this is how I made this. Okay, I hope everything made sense to you, and I will see you in the next lecture. In this chapter, I'm going to introduce you to the concept of match cut, which is a type of transition that is used in animation to seamlessly move from one shot to the another. Okay, and now I'm going to play this example that you see on the screen so that you understand what is going on. So, first of all, let's understand what is a transition. So, a transition is just how you move from one frame to the another without making it awkward, forced, or sudden. Now, match cut is a type of transition that is really common. It's really easy to achieve, and once achieved, it looks good, but it's principle based, meaning once you learn it, you will be able to apply that into anything that you want. Okay, a match cut is a type of transition where two shots are connected. Okay, where two shots here, this one, so for example, here we go from taper to the UFO. Okay, so these two shots are connected through a visual similarity, okay, such as motion. So this taper and UFO are connected through the motion. Okay, so it could be connected through motion, shape, direction, speed. There are so many things to achieve that. To create match cut, you need to understand something called continuity. Continuity is maintaining the visual consistency and flow between frames for seamless storytelling. Okay, it's one of the most powerful and stylistic tool in animation and motion design, allowing you to transform one object into the another. Now, I'm going to explain the key principle behind the match cut, and then I'm going to show you how I achieved and used that not only here, but in this example as well. So this one basically uses match cut as well. We are basically matching this taper's speed, okay, with this. This is basically establishing the continuity, okay, and that is the principle behind this transition. And now we are going to go deeper into that. Okay, so the key principle behind match cut is continuity. Like I said, key thing that you have to remember is continuity. Okay, and don't worry about anything, I'm going to explain everything. Okay, some people might call this morphing, but I don't think morphing is really a right word for this, because I think professionals call it match cut, especially in filmmaking. Okay, it's basically called match cut. So I'm going to call this match cut. You could call it morphing if you want, but I don't think morphing is that appropriate for it. Okay, I'm going to go into the UFO, and now I'm going to show you how I created this. Okay, it's really simple example, so don't worry about that. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up so that you can see. Now I have two composition. First one is where the cow is getting abducted, and the second one is where the dinosaurs like basically scares them away. Okay, so I'm going to open up the UFO dino because both of them are essentially same. So first of all, let's open up with UFO underscore cow. Okay, now I'm going to bring this here. Okay, so this is a sound effect. Okay, this is a text. You don't need to. I'm going to get rid of that. This is a cow mat. Okay, cow mat is basically the mat. Okay, so mat is basically it acts as a mask. Okay, so I want this cow to disappear here. Okay, so what I did is I basically created this shape layer. This is a shape layer. Okay, see, this is a shape layer. Okay, and what I want is I don't want this cow to like go over this part. Okay, I wanted it to feel, at least feel like that this cow is moving into this white part. Okay, and that's why I created this random shape with pen tool. Okay, and then I basically created this. Okay, which is called track mat. Okay, and then I inverted it. Then I created this ground. I created this ground using just solid, and then I applied an effect to like roughen it. The effect is called roughen edges. Okay, and this is a random choice, by the way. So if you want to like roughen things up, for example, if I don't roughen it up, see how it looks bad, right? And so I wanted to make it feel more authentic, and that's why I added this effect. I changed this. I don't think I have changed many things, but okay, that's how I created this ground. Then the most important part here is UFO in, UFO out, and all this. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the most important part here. Everything else is like supporting, you know how in movies there are supporting actors. Okay, so everything else is supporting actor except this. This is a main character, so I'm going to solo this. Now the most important thing that you have to remember whenever you want to achieve match cut is the match cut cannot be achieved if you are not, if you don't know graph editor. Graph editor is the crucial part here. So this is UFO in. So this is basically this taper then comes in here. Okay, so I'm going to go here and then I'm going to press U. Okay, so let's see what's happening here. Okay, so here I have created the shape like we did here. Okay, I have created the shape using the pen tool, right? But right after that, what we did is we animated the offset, right? But as you can see here, I have animated the start and the end. Okay, now what could be the possible reason for that? Now the reason for that is because here I don't mind if that tail or this taper remains consistent, but since we are dealing with like the objects that are in the space, right? So I wanted to like have, like, you know how spaceships when they move really quick, they leave this trail. Okay, and that's why I did this. So basically what I did is I basically animated start and end from 0 to 100. Okay, and then I offset this by few keyframes. Okay, now after what I did after that is I duplicated it and I placed it here. Okay, but there is huge but here. Okay, so this taper basically ends where the UFO begins. Okay, so this was the initial position of the UFO. Okay, so this is going to be the UFO, and if I change the trim, okay, you can see here that this taper basically ends here. Okay, so basically what I did, and now I'm going to reveal how I did what I did. Okay, so first of all, I imported this. Okay, Illustrator file. Okay, I imported this as an Illustrator file. Then and don't get confused. Okay, just pay attention. Okay, then what I did is I basically created shapes from that. Okay, and now before doing anything, before animating UFO, what I did is I basically created this using pen tool. Okay, this shape using pen tool, and then I animated this. Okay, and so what happens is I now have the initial position. So it will be easier to match. So if you look closely, okay, this is where it matches. See, it matches perfectly, right? And that is why it's called match cut. Okay, so I'm going to press Ctrl Z to trim that. Okay, now Once that was done, I basically separated every part of the UFO. Okay, so every part of this UFO is on its own. For example, we have exhaust, then we have this body, which is this blue part, and then we have this window, right? So every part of this layer is on its own. So this UFO was basically built or separated in Illustrator, and there is a chapter on that as well. So don't get confused right now. Your focus should be on understanding the principle and not how I made this. Okay, so focus on learning and understanding the principle. Okay, so what I did is I basically separated everything on its own, and the reason why I did that is because I wanted this exhaust to have its own animation. Okay, so I'm going to press U. Okay, and it doesn't open up because I have created an expression for this. Okay, so if you look closely, see, okay, like it's really busting with energy. Okay, and so I'm going to press E. So E basically opens up the expressions. Okay, and so I applied this expression and I searched for this like this is not my creation. Okay, so what I did is I basically went to ChatGPT and I said, hey ChatGPT, I want to create this UFO that is like busting with energy and it abducts a cow. Okay, and so give me an expression for that wiggle. Okay, but I want it to be abrupt and in a way that looks good. Okay, and so that was the prompt, and I am going to give that prompt to you. Okay, so don't worry about that. Okay, so this is the prompt that I used and I got this expression and then I applied it. Okay, and that's how I did that. Okay, now the next thing that I did is these two are not animated, right? But I still want to animate them, right? But the problem is I have already created an expression on the position property, right? So animating it would ruin this. Okay, so what we use is we use something called nulls. So null object is basically an invisible helper, right? So this is basically a null object. Okay, so see, this is null one. So null object is basically an invisible helper. Like it doesn't show up in a final render, but it's just a blank layer that you can use to control other things. Okay, so think of it like this: you can parent other layers to null object, and then when you move, okay, when you move, scale, rotate the null, all the connected layers, all the parented layers follow. Okay, so let's understand what is parenting first. Okay, so I taught you null. Now let's understand what is parenting. So this is basically parent and these are all the child. Now how do you determine who are the child and who are the parent? Okay, now in real life, you do not get to choose your parents, right? But in After Effects you get that freedom. You can choose and create your parents. As stupid as it sounds, I'm not kidding. Okay, so this portion, right, is what is called parent. Okay, so this is basically parent pick whip tool. Okay, so if I drag this onto this, okay, null one will be the parent, and this layers, okay, this layers will follow the parent. It's the same thing in life. Okay, this is how parenting works in After Effects. Right, now I'm going to show you something. So I'm going to press U. Okay, first of all I'm going to select them, then I'm going to press U. Okay, then I'm going to press U on this. Okay, and don't get confused here. I'm going to explain. I'm going to bring this up. So here, this and this, there is no difference in both of them. Okay, so I'm going to select them and then I'm going to click on this. So this is basically shy. Okay, so it's like that shy guy in the school. He basically hides. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and now he has, like, you know how we put our head on the bench to hide our face. I think that's the symbol. I don't know if it's true or not. And then I'm going to click on this to activate this. Okay, shy, and so it's gone. It's not gone, it's here, but it's basically hiding, and that's why it's called shy. Okay, this is a shy button. Okay, so I'm going to press U and I'm going to hide this. So there is no difference between this animation, okay, and this animation, right? There is absolutely no difference. Okay, so let's understand these keyframes so that you can understand it more clearly. So here I'm going to match this incoming taper with this. And how I did that? So I already have the path for the taper, and I already know the ending point, which is going to be this point, and it has already been keyframed, right? I already taught you the principle of begin with the end. Okay, so what I did is I dropped these keyframes, okay, and then I went back, okay, and then what I did is I tried to match this, like this null, with this path, okay, and then I trimmed it in a way that it looks as if they both are the same object. And that is how you achieve the match cut. Okay. Now, key part here is the graph editor. And I'm going to show you, it's not that complicated here. So I'm going to show you graph on each of them. So I'm going to open this up, and this is the graph for this. Okay. So we go slow and then really quick. Okay. So how do you know or how to match cut? Okay, so why I trimmed this layer at this point? Okay, why not here? Why here? And the answer to that is on the peak. Okay, so I'm going to press Shift F3, or I'm going to just click here. And so this basically is where the both the layers are on the peak of the speed. Okay, so it's in between, right? So whenever the object is fastest, you trim that. Okay, that's the principle that you have to remember. Okay, so I basically trimmed it there, and then look at all these layers. Okay, so they basically began here. Okay, and then it goes from here to here. Okay, don't worry about this, just focus only on this part. Okay, so let's understand this one by one. So first of all, I created this, right? Then I matched the null with this path, okay, with this path, and then I created the graph in a way that I can trim this layer at the end. Okay, so it basically is the fastest at the end. Okay, so you have to remember that if you want to create match cut, you have to cut or trim this layer at the fastest point. Okay, and if I make a tiny mistake here, it will be ruined. Like, see. Okay, so this trimming is really crucial. And now I'm going to show you this one as well. So I'm going to go into graph editor. Okay, right? So let's see position. So position has this graph, okay, and it's completely fine. See, and it's completely fine because we basically start here. So it turns and then it goes really quick, right? And then it stops. And so that's how you achieve the match cut. And that's what we did in the previous chapter, right? So you can also label keyframes in After Effects. Okay, so all you have to do is just select the keyframe, right click on the keyframe, by the way, right click on the keyframe, label, and then whatever it is you want to choose. Okay, now the reason why I labeled these keyframes is because these keyframes are basically this subtle movement of the UFO here. Okay, and that's why I have changed this color so that I remember that, okay, yeah, this is that, right? The next thing is it basically goes here, right? It goes back, and then it disappears into the space. So in this lecture, I'm going to show you why complexity is not always a great idea. So I want to show you an example of video I made back in 2019. So this video took me about 3 days to make. It is packed with effects, textures, and visually pleasing colors. At least that's what I thought. But despite all that, something felt off. It just didn't look good, or it just didn't look right, is what I should say. Now, here is the another video that I made for this class project. Okay, I made this in just 40 minutes. The key images in center are AI generated and are free to use. So what makes this simpler video more effective? To understand that, let's break down the core of motion design and compositing, that is storytelling. In the first example, there is no clear focal point. There are two important elements, a telescope and an eye. But when I revisited the video, I had to ask myself, what was I even trying to say? Well, my original intent was to highlight the importance of health of our eyes as a motion designers, because we work on screens all the time. And that reminded me of a crucial principle when I looked at the video. And that is, if your composition doesn't communicate your story without a sound or a voiceover, it's not working. So, this is the ultimate litmus test of motion design. So, watch your video without sound or voiceover, and if the flow of the video makes sense, great. If not, your video lacks the most essential element of motion design, and that is storytelling. So, if you don't know, this is what some great directors do. I have heard many directors like Martin Scorsese say this. Okay, they watch the entire movie without any sound. Okay, and so that's how they look at the composition and story. Okay, so composition is basically a visual storytelling medium. Your key element, that is the main character of your scene, should stand out and interact with other elements in a way that conveys meaning. Now, in the second example, the storytelling is clear. There is a structured flow leading to a conclusion reinforced by the text at the end. Even though this video is much simpler, it has a higher chance of connecting with viewers than the more complex one. The reason behind this is the KISS principle, okay, KISS, which stands for keep it simple, stupid. Okay, so we often think that adding more motion and complexity will grab attention, but that's not always true. A simple approach doesn't mean sacrificing quality. Just because there is simple animation does not mean that it is low quality. Instead, focus on crafting a strong narrative first, and once you have that, ensure that every composition reflects your message. The first video is overloaded with animation, diluting the story, or I should say, it doesn't even have a story, right? Meanwhile, the second video has just one or two animations, yet the impact is much stronger compared to the first one. The difference is staggering, and the difference is storytelling. I'm going to give you a simple yet effective formula for crafting a story, which is an ABCD formula. A stands for attention, B stands for build up, C stands for conflict, and D stands for delivery, that is resolution. Okay, so first of all, you start with A, which is you start with a hook that grabs audience's attention. This could be a surprising fact, an intriguing question, or an emotional moment. For example, John had everything: money, a great job, and a loving family. But what he saw on the way home changed everything. Then we go to build up, which is B. So introduce the context. Who is the main character? What is their goal? What challenges are they facing? So, for example, after years of walking on the same road, John takes a different road, but he found a huge spider web and got stuck in it. Okay, so this is a build up. Then we have C, which is conflict, the tension or the turning point. Okay, so what obstacle must the character overcome? What's at stake here? Okay, so for example, here he tried to break free, like he was worried about his family, he just wanted to go back home, but it has been 3 days and he's still stuck, and his body is getting weaker and weaker as the time passes. All of his efforts were failing. Of course, I haven't mentioned that really well through the visuals. Okay, I have kept this example as simple as possible, but I'm just exaggerating the conflict here. That's the principle of animation as well. Okay, you should sometimes exaggerate your stories. That's completely fine. Then we move on to D, which is delivery or the resolution of the story. So how is that conflict resolved? So here we end the story with a lesson, a realization, or a transformation. There is a huge transformation between the character. Okay, so for example, John freed himself from the web the moment he realized that his struggle to get out was only tightening the web's grip. And the instant he stopped fighting and just he let go of everything, the web loosened itself and he was able to effortlessly break free. Okay, so our character goes through a massive transformation from A to B to C to D. Okay, so A is starting point and D is the ending point. So this is the basic formula that you can use. And just because I talk about character doesn't mean it always have to be characters. Okay, there are so many ways to tell your stories, but make sure that your story reflects in your composition. Okay, and that's the entire point. If your composition does not tell your story and you still use these principles, that will be useless. Okay, first craft a story, then use these principles to draw better drawings of your thumbnails. Okay, and then you start animating. Okay, so it's really crucial that your composition reflects what it is that you are trying to tell, and you must have conviction in that. Okay, and so that's the end of this class.